modern schemes, unraveling truths and chasing dreams.
Good evening, Eagles fan. Let me turn this down a little bit. Just waiting for the interviewee, and then I'll get right underway. So this is part 2 of the interview with Kalen of EnergeandSeeOil part 2. He is a hoodooist. I gotta ask him how many generations, but he's really talking about the foundation of hoodoo and not just the spiritual boutique aspect of it. So we're learning about the 6 fingers of hoodoo, hoodoo water, and why hoodoo is an indigenous science as opposed to the origins being from West Africa. So, very interesting topic. The chat really loved it. So we're just waiting for him to come in, and hopefully the same people will come in because we do still have some pressing questions that I want to know about. Good evening, Chris. I hope all is well. Did you mean to request up?
Hey, BX, yeah, I mean to request up.
What's up?
How you doing? Yeah, you said something to me this morning about Afro Elite will have some on in April,
April 1st.
which is a
And it's
Wednesday.
called, right, but it'll probably be either in the afternoon or the evening. And you could just peek in and even write it from the comments if you can't.
I'll come on, if y'all talking business, I'll come up on and share, you know.
Well, we want to promote your business basically because somebody asked where are the Black American construction workers? Stuff like more tangible than just the online boutique.
Right.
And
Okay.
so I immediately thought of you because of a conversation that we had.
Uh-huh.
I know you're out in Virginia, correct?
Yes, in Richmond, Virginia. I'm like 90 miles from DC, so I do DMV area and some parts of North Carolina.
Oh, okay. So
Yeah.
I'll be sure to tell them because I think the people who brought it up are actually from North Carolina. So this will be good. So
Yeah,
we kind
yeah.
of want to get a business directory, but in the meantime, I asked Afrobeat if I could invite you so you could come up and just tell us about your business,
Right,
exactly what it is you do, and how to contact you. That'll
right.
be April 1st. And of course, I'll let you know the time once I found out.
Okay, and I appreciate that, BX. Yeah,
You're welcome.
yeah, because like I said, this August will be 21 years for me since I had my business. So, you know,
Congratulations.
yeah, thank
Yeah.
you. So,
You're welcome.
yeah, so yeah, I'll be glad to come up there on the pound and share my information. And then, you know, just like we said, we network and supporting each other, you know.
Right.
Yeah. So, yeah, I definitely would love to get involved with that, you know, as far as our people goes, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah. But other than how you
Okay.
doing?
I'm good. I'm good. I'm in there. I'm hanging in there.
That's good. Cause
Like,
I mean, you a powerful black woman. I love me some DX, even though we never met, but it just our
thank
spirits we
you.
connect, and I like that
Right.
about you, and you thorough, and that's what I say about the New Yorkers. Y'all thorough people because y'all keep it 100%.
Thank you.
Yeah, I ain't gonna say all New York, but the ones I know
I
like you.
know.
So
I didn't think you meant all New York,
yeah,
but I did it.
yeah, but yeah, I mean, I enjoyed listening to you all. I mean, I learned so much over the last year. So, even though I might not go on panels and share, but I'm always listening.
Right.
Yeah. So that's what I'm about.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I always give you a shout out.
Yeah, I know. That's why hey, I got your back. And that's why I'm like, wherever you go, I'm following you. So
Yeah.
and you got everybody else back. So I mean that's what a part of like networking and us, like I say again, that unity. I'm deep on that. As far as unity,
Right.
you know what I'm saying? Because that's what we need to be. That
Okay.
unity, because without that unity, we need to come together, because that unity occurs deep, and like y'all said, while we get involved, we take over, you know. So that's where I'm at with that. I mean, I just love, and then I really like Basic because I'm glad he started his lives because that's a sharp brother.
Right.
Yeah, so I am proud of him how he started doing his own lives and stuff. I like that. And then we got to be careful, like you said, them opposite in there. You got to be careful. You got to know who's who.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know. So I think my interviewee came in, Kalen.
Okay. Well, I'm gonna drop
Let me
down
say
and I'm gonna listen.
thank you. Kalen, are you still in the room? Hi, JC. How are you? Hi, Leo. How are you? I'm waiting for Kalen. I saw him peek in the room. Thank you for the likes. As you know, TikTok done cut my my gift option because I choose to remain private. Hi, Kira. I'm waiting for my interviewee, and then we'll get part two going. This is Kayla is telling us about the foundation of Hulu, and not so much the what he calls the pop culture of it, and what I call the spiritual boutique of it. So, and what I'm realizing is that, a lot of us have practiced hoodoo without knowing it was hoodoo. We may call it something else. We do know it's a tradition. Certain New Year's Eve customs are a tradition, but it's basically hoodoo, you know? So, Caitlin was touching on that. Hey, Allie. Waiting for Kaylin to come, and then we'll get back down to part two. I'm really interested in his views on spinners and the element of hoodoo in it. I don't know. It didn't sound like she was too pleased, but we'll find out. I'm gonna send him a quick message. Hi, Cookie. It was you that said you really like that. Hi, Allie. Do you know you came up?
Yeah, I didn't mean to.
Oh, no problem. How are you?
I'm good.
That's good. That's
Thank you.
what
How are you?
matters.
Oh yeah, you
I'm
can drop. Yeah,
fine.
I was trying to get the likes. So trying to like the live, and I got up there by accident.
It's okay. It's okay. You know how to drop yourself?
Nope.
I'll drop you.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Alright. And so yeah, so they cut my gifting options, and then I was like, well, am I gonna open my room up to everybody? And I'm like, nah, because I get enough of them on other platforms, you know. I just do. So we need some um, spaces just for us, like really just for us. Now, it could be a little frustrating when lineage has a problem and we get to arguing. Okay, Kalen says that he is running late. I guess I can monologue for a minute. So I plan to get back on track with the Black American History post. March is the month for women, and we did have power couples. I think I did 2 days back to back. So now I don't know if I'm going to do power couples again. And I did give some of the lineage some homework, and some of them been skipped out on the homework, y'all. Even before I stopped to do the interview with Kalen and just take a little breather for myself. Some of them wasn't even showing up with the daggone homework. hmm Then it became double homework. I think I should give them triple. You know, pick two Black American powerhouse couples that they view, and then, a Black American woman, just to keep in line with the theme of the month. But no matter if it's February, no matter if it's March, no matter if it's June, September, or December, we celebrate Black history, specifically Black American history, since we have to emphasize everything, 365 days of the year. All right, hopefully he'll come soon. Is there anything that y'all want to comment in the chat and I could build off of? So we found out Chris has been in business for about 21 years. It is construction. He is in the Virginia area, but he services, where else do you service? Was it DC in the Carolina? Well, North Carolina to be specific. Hi, Black Love. How are you? Waiting for Kalen. He said he's running a bit late. So, in other news, I think it was the Supreme Court. Yes, the DMV area and Richmond area. That's the areas that Chris services. He is into construction, building houses and stuff. And me and Chris had a very interesting conversation where he said that Black Americans really do the work, the sturdy work, and sometimes he got to run behind the other folks. Am I correct, Chris? So it's very interesting to know if you are a Black American business. We are trying to get a directory going. It will be digital as far as I know. And we can actually do, and Chris says, yes, ma'am. We can actually do digital and print, right? Because I'm going to have to take the notes and all of that, and we could just put that in book form. So if you are a Black American business, reach out to me so I can see how, or I could even tap you into Melrose Radio, who already has an established site. So we don't need just one site. We can have a few, but I mean for immediate exposure. And he has his own vetting process, y'all. So even though I may be familiar with you, he may have some extra added questions. But that's just to protect the lineage because the Black business movement has been co-opted. That we do know. Hi, Ife. So it's always necessary to have certain guards up, vetting processes. Yeah, I think we've championed a lot of people. And then what sucks is that we get the brunt of the, I can't support black businesses. They have bad customer service. Meanwhile, you know for a fact, the Caribbean, many of them, not all, has bad customer service. Go into a Caribbean restaurant in the morning in New York. You got to roll the dice on who you're going to get, what personality, right? But they never say Caribbeans have bad service until recently when we started calling them out. I think we're just tired of everybody appropriating the term or the us and them black. And then they reap the benefits of everything good that comes with being identified as us, black as us. But then we get their garbage dumped right in our lap. Yep. I hope he's still able to make it. All right, let me read my notes. Oh, so like I was saying, the Supreme Court ruled that welfare fraud, if you're an immigrant, is a deportable offense. Yes, now we have to get them to say identifying as a black American and you don't have lineage ties to the chattel slavery era, that is a deportable offense too. There has to be some reprimands given out. All right. Hey, Black American House. I would say thank you, and they would just look at me, shaking my head. In parentheses, she has Jamaican restaurant. Yeah. You know what's weird is that TikTok is telling me that y'all could complete the daily missions, but before you couldn't give the hearts. Like the last time I was live, can somebody click the heart and see if they can complete the daily mission? They playing with me, y'all. So for my next live, I was gonna do Maria Civics. No, see? And she is who we call the architect of group economics. Well, let's see. So Maria Civics was the matriarch of the Cifax dynasty. Maria Civics served as the central figure of an influential 19th century lineage. She's also known as the defender of land retention. She engaged in a critical legal battle to defend her ownership of a 17.5-acre estate, which had been gifted by George Washington Park Custis. George Washington Park Custis. And here we go. Maria Civics is the architect of group economics. By holding onto her land, Maria provided the economic floor that allowed her descendants to attend Howard University, found early schools in DC, and built successful real estate and medical practices. Hey Chris, how are you? Black American House says, I will keep doing the bare minimum so I can eventually level up. Thank you. Maria Civics also is known as the securement of congressional relief. Through the advocacy of her son William, Senator Ira Harris of New York introduced a private bill to protect her land rights. President Andrew Johnson signed the act for the release of Maria Civics on June 12, 1866, legally confirming her title to the land. And what we're talking about is Arlington, Virginia, the Freedmen's Village. You know, they used to have little Freedmen's Village, well, not little, Freedmen's Village, and I believe he was a Confederate soldier. What's the Confederate soldier's name? Is there a Robert? I'm gonna Google it after this, but yeah. When the government turned certain things into Freedmen's Villages for the newly emancipated ancestors, marriage and family honors. In 1821, she married Charles Siffix, the enslaved head of the Arlington House dining room in the mansion's family parlor, the same room where her half-sister, Mary Ann Randolph Custis, married Robert E. Lee. Yeah, Robert E. Lee. 10 years later, together Maria and Charles had 10 children. Advocate in Freedmen's Village. Maria and her family acted as a buffer and advocate for the residents of Freedmen's Village. She used her unique legal standing to protect and advocate and educate newly freed individuals, teaching essential trades like sewing. Guardians of oral history. Due to her close ties to the Arlington estate and Custis Lee family, she served as a living archive holding the oral history and genealogical truth of her community. I don't even see the counter on here. They're just screwing my room all up, y'all. So, network of spiritual resistance. Maria was a pillar of the religious community at Arlington. Her household was part of a network that maintained ancestral traditions, navigating a world where organized faith often overlapped with seership as a form of spiritual resilience. And we learned about seership with Pastor Beverly Randolph, right? So there probably was a connection. And the Black American House did say Randolph was President Jefferson's connection. Just comment yes or no for me, if you're still in the room. So that Randolph's name is very prominent. So her bridge to New York influence, her lineage has significant connections to New York, particularly through her son John B. Siffix, who moved to Brooklyn in the 1890s and became active in local politics. This extended the family's influence from the DC area to the burgeoning FBA political hubs. You're not for sure, but you did mention Jefferson, correct? There we go. Good evening.
I'm late. So sorry for being late.
It's okay. Things happen. How are you?
I'm doing good. How about you? How about yourself?
I'm okay. I was like, dang, I wonder if he wanted to reschedule. But I went ahead and started, it is Women's History Month, so I was just reading a bit about Maria Siffix from Arlington, Virginia.
Absolutely.
I believe they believe that she was the daughter of Robert E. Lee.
Robert who?
Robert E. Lee, the Confederate.
Oh.
Let me scroll up and check the notes.
Oh, that would be really interesting. You said that's what you guys are doing, is going over some women's history topics.
Yeah. Well, I was monologuing. I was like, let me go ahead because good evening, Sister Keisha, Gia, and I see everybody else in the room. I said, because these are like topics that I had, or people I wanted to honor after our interview. Yeah. So since you was a little bit late, I said, okay, let me just read about her just to fill the air.
Absolutely. Yeah, I had an emergency situation with a client, and he just needed to get a couple of things, just some information. They were doing things wrong. So I was like, yeah, let's get this fixed real quick. But what was it that we left off on like the other day?
I can pull it up. Oh, okay.
And I also got something I wanted to share with you guys too, here later on. A lot of times, like, we're talking about the philosophy and all those things. I don't know you said yourself, you are a practitioner, and are you familiar with, money workings, things of that nature? Because that's something that a lot of people are attracted to when it comes to hoodooism. the talks of wealth, especially. But it's springtime, so I would like to share some, just some ideas that maybe the family could try. If whether they're a beginner or been doing this forever, like there are just some really interesting concepts, from a money working standpoint that I think people can do to get that the spring cash going, get ready for this time of year. It's because of the time of the year. It's some of the best times for manifestation, especially when it comes to finances, and not just making money, but holding on to it. So we could talk about that too sometime today.
No problem. I'm gonna say this. I think for some things, I'm like a novice kitchen practitioner. They would call them witches, kitchen witches. But my son, like my children, be like, "Can you do this for me, Bob?" Because whenever you do something for me, it happens. So it's like I can manifest very well for other people, but when it comes to me, the ancestors is like, "Child, hold on. We looking at your situation right now." So yeah, that's why I said I'm not gonna go ahead and like tarot readings and stuff is fine, but everything else, I'm gonna do spiritual oils. I'm gonna do spiritual soap, stuff like that. But I'm trying to hone my craft, and I believe that it was that I wasn't firm with the foundation of hoodoo. Because every time I see your post, you say something that I ain't learning them people I was sitting under. You know what I'm saying? But
Yeah.
they're also of the belief that not to teach everybody everything. So I call that
Yeah.
spiritual critique. Yeah.
Yeah, and
But I'm gonna just
no, that's the sad part about it too, is that is the reason why the arcane ways are going the way of the dinosaurs right now. Because there's so many things a lot of elders held back because that's how they were making their bread and butter. And it was that fear of loss. Even though it was invalid. Like I had this thing I would tell my grandmother, and she even told me, just from a wisdom standpoint, it made so much sense to her. And she was a very strong-minded individual. You couldn't tell her nothing, and she was wise. So she wasn't like this is something like this is somebody that was very powerful, very popular when it came to hoodoo root work. She didn't believe in talking about anything to anyone outside of the family. But I had to remind her, I was like, we're going into a situation where a lot of people in our family did not pick up the gift. They just, for some odd reason, it didn't carry on. And we come from one of those lineages where we would have an entire generation that was working, generation after generation after generation, up until the last two. And now, so we're in a situation where we're seeing that in our family, there's a fear of, it's pretty much gone away. And in the Black American community, you see it collectively. And I can just tell by some of the ideas and concepts that so-called practitioners online are usually emphasizing. It has a very African pitch to it, which has nothing to do with the more Negro legacy of hoodoo, because it didn't have that pitch in its origins. A lot of people would think, I just heard a lady talking about Annie Christmas and how a lot of folks are associating that with particular orishas, or they're trying to always tie things back to certain, or orisha or loa. And there was a reason in hoodoo that they didn't have a pantheon of spirits. It wasn't so that they could hide the ancestral spirits or present them as it wasn't like they were speaking of ancestors, but then also associating them with a pantheon-based spirit or a lower or orisha. They specifically separated those energetics, and hoodoo was always ancestral only. And it forced you to deal with the nature of things to keep you out of trouble. And it turned out it was a good bet, because when you look at Black America, especially 1870 up until like 1970, there was just this huge wave of success, creation, inventions, and the popularity of our culture took over the whole world. Definitely in that time, like for that 100 years, it's still crazy, but it was real crazy then. And there was no admixing. There was no question about where it was coming from. Very much so Black American, and they would call us the soul people, things like that. So now it's, things are getting confused, and a lot of it comes from the spiritual community finding that their real practice, their hoodoo they're doing isn't as strong as they would like for it to be, and then they venture off into other things, or they start trying to admix it with other things. and it's killing the actual strength of the real practice. And so that's what I used to tell my grandmother is that, if we don't do something here over the next 10, 20 years, it's going to be gone. Like, it's going to be gone. And I think that fear of loss that her generation had just never made sense to me, because I was like, it's one thing to share the close practice with outsiders, but and we're going to figure out ways to get real intimate details to the community. Maybe even creating closed private apps where you have to verify that you are Black American, whether it's census based or because there's already organizations that, like the Solon community, they're creating a type of recognition program where you'll be able to certify yourself as a Negro, and then with those things you'll be able to get into a whole lot of different beneficial programs based, exclusive to Negroes. Like, that's being worked on right now, and that's something I'm thinking of using, like creating a closed app where, which is not hard to do. Those are things that you can actually pay for, closed apps to be made, and have it where it's member only, and only people who have, the access to it can get in there, and just make sure you're getting people who really respect the fact that it needs to be, that it is closed, it needs to stay intimate. And then you teach them the complete in and outs. And the way I look at it is that everyone has a refrigerator in their house. If you are a root worker and a hoodoo practitioner, you just do it full time, that's all you do, like my grandmother did, everyone's got a refrigerator. Yet refrigerators still sell by the millions. It's a saturated market. There are plenty of refrigerators in everyone's houses, and it's still something that sells all the time, and it'll never stop, because it's a rotating product. And the thing about people are always needing work, people are always needing help, and there's just so many ways to look at it. Like, I work on myself more than anything. I do have clients, I got a lot of clients, but I really don't need clients. And I always make it clear to the clients, I don't need to do this, so this is more of a community service thing. It's not about money, because if you do hoodoo right, you'll make money off of your own merit. Like, it'll come to you. You don't need people to do a service for it to make money in this. And if it's taught correctly, you see that, hand over fist. Like, it's just not, it's like it's, what I'm saying? Like, so it's kind of philosophically, I want to help change that philosophy and that paradigm, because there's a reason now it's being hijacked by a bunch of people that don't know anything really about this, because the real practitioners are either gone the way of the dinosaurs already, or they're just so few and far between that their voices aren't as loud as those who are faking the funk. And that's where the problem really comes in. You got people with huge followings, don't know nothing, they're not talking about nothing, bro. And a lot of people assume because they have a huge following, that makes them powerful. But you have people who are atheists who have huge followings, so that doesn't have anything to do with whether a person knows what they're talking about or not. And that's where that problem comes in. It's when you have the 6 fingers of the mojo hand intact, when you have the first 3 of the 6 fingers intact, there really isn't a whole lot that you can't do from a health and wealth standpoint, as far as like manifesting for yourself, and at least manifesting for your immediate circle, those who are right there within your bloodline and ancestry. Like, it's very powerful. And all you got to do is understand how to really develop hoodoo water, hoodoo vision, and hoodoo harmonics. And, those things will come to you. Health and wealth will come. And if you want to do it for others, that's where hoodoo root work, hoodoo conjure, and hoodoo haints is important to kind of understand, especially when you're working with things outside of yourself, working with other people. So, so yeah, that's how it really goes.
You go, but it's like, so if you hear a spirit say conjure, what would you think?
If I hear a spirit say conjure,
Yeah.
okay. If I hear a spirit just say the word conjure, or to tell me that I need to conjure or I should conjure,
No, it was just the word.
Well, hoodoo conjure is still ancestral, so it's just like conjure itself. It can be ancestral or it can be outside of your ancestral, and all it implies is you drawing on or calling on the spirit. So that's all conjure really is. Like, a lot of times when we think conjure, we think spell work, and you can do manifestation and things like that with hoodoo water. Like, because like say like we were talking about how the Bible is looked at as water. So you could take scripture and write it down on a bay leaf or write it down on some petition paper. As long as your ancestry is right, there's ways that you can bury that work, do different things with it, and petition and manifest that request. Not dealing with no hoodoo conjurer at all, because you're not calling on a spirit at all. You're just using your own spirit, because you are a ghost of the machine as well. So you can always just use your own ghost, if or Holy Ghost, depending on how you look at it, if you just wanted to get things across. But when you need a real, if you're trying to draw a certain ancestor that was very powerful, or a particular ancestral spirit that's just a Black American spirit, not even directly connected to you, but within the Black American bloodline, that's where a hoodoo conjure really comes in. So I practice personally hoodoo conjure when it comes to my grandmother. So I know how to put certain things together to work with her, because she's no longer, she is deceased. And and then of course, Hi John, I love to work with that spirit. I love to work with like energies like Big Mama Mammy and Madam CJ Walker from a success standpoint. So there are ways of practicing hoodoo conjure to connect with. I'm not related to Madam CJ Walker, but so if I want to connect with her, I would need to practice hoodoo conjure. And I'm practicing still within my ancestry, because she's an ancestral Black American. She is a Negro spirit. So I'm not going to a spirit outside of the Black American bloodline, conjuring that spirit or requesting to work with that spirit. Because even when we say conjure, most of the time we're requesting. And whether that spirit wants to work with you or, that's up, that depends on how things go when you do request.
Get choked up or something. I don't know.
What'd you say?
I said I'm kind of scared I might get choked up or something. You call on the wrong one.
Absolutely. That's a smart fear. Like that's I wish everyone was that way. I wish everyone had that level of discernment when it comes to conjuring. Like, most of these practitioners today are so excited about they hear root work, they want to root work. They hear conjure, they want to conjure. But those are, and that's why, like, it's so important that it's such a healthy thing to understand the mojo hand, because that's finger number 4. When you say hoodoo root work, that's finger number 4. Hoodoo conjure is finger number 5. And they're number 4 and 5 and not number 1 or 2 for a reason, because you need to learn 1, 2, and 3. Hoodoo water, hoodoo harmonics, and hoodoo vision first before you start working with those arenas. Because if you don't know what you're seeing, if you don't know what you're hearing, if the water content, like when we think about it, like if you try to taste something and your mouth is dry, you're not going to taste anything. Like, there's a liquid nature to every organ in the body. If there's no water in that organ, or what we call structured fluids, we shouldn't just say water, but it's like a fluidity in every organ. If that thing dries out, it doesn't work. So your taste buds don't work, your eyes won't work, your hearing won't work, none of your senses will work if the water relationship within those organs, within those sensory, those areas of perception are off. And the same thing goes for, like, when I talk about senses to people, I know a lot of times we're told you got 5 senses, you got 6 senses, you got all this crazy stuff. It's 1 sense. It's 1, because if I put enough heat on your tongue, you won't taste anything. If I put enough cold on your tongue, you won't taste anything. And if I put enough heat behind your eyes, you won't see anything. If I put enough cold behind your eyes, you won't see anything. And it's interesting how no matter where the sense is that we're talking about, depending on the temperament or the temperature, the level of working of that sense will be on or off. So that you're dealing with the same sense. It's just in different areas. And that's how we look at it when it comes to, hoodoo. It's 1 sense. And so when I'm feeling someone staring at me, I don't get surprised about that, because, what's the point if I know that, when I think of all sensing, regardless of whether it's something that's seen or unseen, I look at it all as 1 sense that's doing that. How strong that sense is or how weak it is really dependent on their understanding of the individual. Because you're feeling people when they're staring at you. Or you look to the phone and all of a sudden it rings. Like, those little weird, like what we call glitches in the matrix that happen. Like we know something isn't right, but it happens so often that we just ignore it as, as a community. And because it's but what you're really dealing with is one sense that's expressing itself in many different ways. And that's, without that hoodoo harmonics, understanding, harmonics is vibrational. So understanding the water is one thing, then understanding the vibrations in the water, like light itself is a vibration. So the light on the water, if you don't understand that vibrational energy, all of these things we're talking about, like hoodoo root work and hoodoo conjure, can get dangerous, because it's like, who are you conjuring? Like, if you don't really have control of your senses enough, how do you know what you're speaking to, and how do you know if you can trust how you feel? And not to just keep going off on the same thing, but I'll give you, this is just because this is a lady I was just talking to, is someone who is bipolar, and this is a beautiful woman. She's doing very well dealing with her condition the natural way. She uses a particular product, and she no longer uses medication, but she's not as disciplined as she needs to be. So sometimes she has episodes. She still have these issues, and she's trying to maintain her job. She don't want to lose her job. And I keep having to emphasize to her that when she came to me, I was like, I told you, this doesn't really have as much to do with neurological configuration as you think, or as what the doctor is saying, because it's more connected to the fact that you can feel someone staring at you when your back is turned than anything else. Like when something short circuits, like we have this electric field around us. And whenever you're dealing with electric fields, there's the potential for short circuiting. And when things short circuit, the electricity doesn't go inside or shrink. It goes really far. It spreads out. So we have this field that allows us to sense things that are 20 feet to 5 feet in front of us on average. The average person can deal with 20 to 5 feet in front of them, no problem. There are some people, though, that through training can go way further than that. They might be able to go across the planet, all the way to the other side of the world and sense what's going on over there just with their senses, and because of training. And then there's some people who short circuit, and because of their short circuiting, that field goes out in a more violent, sporadic way, because there's a lack of grounding in their lifestyle or in their life. And they're picking up on the fact that there's someone down the road feeling depressed, feeling this way, doing something's happening to them, maybe getting beat up, getting abused verbally or physically. And when you pick up on that energy, all of a sudden, being that we do know that there's plenty of evidence showing that we can feel when people are staring at us, like we can pick up on other people's energy. So if you're short circuiting and picking up on other people's vibes and energetic characteristics, that's where a lot of these situations that are considered bipolarism or ADHD, all these little things, a lot of these things, not everything, but a lot of things can easily be traced back to a more spiritual origin. And, and I'm just trying to pronounce that with her. The reason why she was getting relief, because she was grounding properly and being consistent with the grounding. But it ain't something you can stop just because you've done it. Like, you got to ground for the rest of your life, because that's the nature of things. You can't be ungrounded and then expect that condition to not keep to stop. Because when you're dealing with gifted people, especially, they have to be more disciplined than the average person. And, and they're looked at as if they're cursed, because, it's like it's a gift and a curse when we say that. That's because if you don't use the gift in a disciplined way, it's going to curse you. So she's dealing with everyone else's emotions and feelings around her. That's not even, she don't even know these people. They off in the distance in another building. But because of that, her ability to perceive and pick up, and because of that ability to short circuit and go really far out, she's picking up on things and then not understanding, why am I feeling depressed? Why am I feeling, I don't have like she said, I ain't got a boyfriend, but I can't stand this man, and he ain't did nothing to me. And it's just like, well, that's probably because you're picking up on someone being abused down the road. We don't know for sure, but that's how, it just, when it comes to the solution, is interesting as we theorize about what the problems are. The solutions are easy to find, and I think that has a lot to do with the fact that the theories are correct that we're, giving people when it comes to conditions like that. So it plays right into the energy of, someone trying to tap into hoodoo root work or hoodoo conjure. Like, you're dealing with a field, and if your field is not healthy, if it's not balanced, if it's not correctly, arranged, you don't know what you can pick up in the process of trying to conjure the spirits in nature. Like different, like people go and try to tap into trees and stuff and not realizing that sometimes that ain't necessarily good. Like nature can get pretty vicious. Like depending on your temperament and its temperament towards you, you might have a bad experience trying to tap into even natural spirits. So it's just so much context, so much context.
Yeah. That makes sense because of hurricanes. Like we know Mother Nature, well, that's what I call them. Nature as a whole can be destructive. It can wipe out whole towns and cities, right?
Absolutely.
Destroy countries, islands. So no, when you were talking about the lady didn't know what she was feeling, she doesn't know these people, but she was picking up from other people's energy.
Hmm.
New mentioned the impact, right?
Yes,
I'm familiar with that because I'm an empath, but the fact that New said that, I only hear women talking about being empaths. I rarely hear about men saying that, but it makes sense because my oldest son and everybody, I know y'all hear me talk about my oldest son. He's like my oil, he's the oil to my water. Like sometimes we just don't mix, right? But he's my twin, right?
absolutely.
He's like me on steroids. But for some reason, he would tell me, I just come in this area and I'm so mad.
I
Um,
feel you.
right. And I got to tell you where we live, right? And for some reason, he just didn't like the neighbor, right? He didn't like one of my neighbors. And he threatened to beat the living daylights out of him. Do you know, years later, what I found out?
What's that?
The man was MSing his daughters or stepdaughters. They had to
Mm.
send the girls away. He didn't even go to jail.
And he's probably picking up on that. Like that's that. You know, some people are way more sensitive than others. Not even trying to be nosy, but just their spirits is incapable of being just to itself. Like it's constantly aware of, it's sensitive to the environment. And and all I think all of our ancestors used to be that way before modern, I'd say 10,000 years ago or back, before more modern agricultural practices and things. Like the way they had to live, to be hunters and gatherers, like you had to be super sensitive and mindful and empathetic about what's going on around you. A lot of people, they go like it. So it's so much to think about, like you're saying. Just you hug a tree all day, but do you understand the nature of that tree and what is really? Trees are very combative, because they can't get up and move. So they create all kinds of chemicals and different things to deter things from eating on them, and like so everything's got the will to live, and with that will comes that nature, the potential to be dark if necessary, to do what it has to do to survive. And so it's just like so it's that like the nature of just being sensitive to everything. I think is in us. It's an ancestral thing. And then of course being around danger like that, being around people who have the potential to be demonic. Most people who are doing things like graping and taking, doing these weird things, like taking advantage of anyone, whether it's physically, mentally, spiritually, any kind of way. Most of them are dealing with a possession because it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense to like no one comes out that way naturally out the womb being vicious. Like it takes a lot of, it almost takes possession. It takes a lot of influence. And that's all a possession really is an energetic influence on a person. And so that's like your son is just being perceptive, and even yourself, like just it's a natural thing, especially when you're dealing with gifted people. You're gonna, yeah, and that's why it's harder. Like life can get a lot tougher for people who are naturally gifted because being able to channel it, staying grounded, like you have to be more disciplined than most people, and that makes life a little tougher because there's a lot of non-disciplined activity everywhere. Go eat this, go drink this, go do this, go listen to this, when all those things can cause your need for ground to be this, like that grounded needed to control that electric field, electromagnetic field, in the sense that energetic field around us. It's if it's short circuiting, like it really makes it hard to pinpoint what's what. Like why am I feeling this way? What's going on here? And so you could be feeling unsafe and you're completely safe, but because someone is unsafe right by you, close by, you're picking up on that, and that inability to know exactly why you feel this way about that person has more to do with that gift not being disciplined versus, it's like, something's wrong. You can't help how you're acting towards it, but you don't know why you feel this way. Why are you so angry with this person? And they come to find out, you see that their nature is nasty. Like they ain't right. So
All of us gifted. But we don't have the structure. They're learning with me. So there's some things that come naturally to us.
yes,
Yeah, there is. But the fact that they're grown and I'm just focusing really on spirituality for the past few years, some of them give a resistance to it, right? Because they're set in their ways. They're grown. But one thing I do notice is they come back to me and be like, Mom, remember when you told me to do X, Y, Z because this is what was happening? But I just hate that we have to have that period where they give so much resistance because some of the things could be cut out before it gets to that point you realize Mama was right. You know what I'm saying? That makes
absolutely.
yeah. So if you want to, I could go back to the questions. We did go through we went through the root verse. Okay, we went through geopolitics of it. We talked about Ghana. We talked about Ifa. We
Hmm.
talked about the coffins in Ghana with the floral sacrifice, right?
Absolutely.
Because they're here talking to the Caribbean, this one, that one, and trying to the ancestors' reinterment side. So academic credibility, versus indigenous science, we did touch on it, but I kind of had a question that I didn't ask. So we talked about Melvin Herskovich and the retention theory.
Yeah.
But I had the question of, and it's called the credibility gap. Are authors like Yvonne Cheroux, Albert Robertu, and Katrina Hazard Donald truly credible, or are they viewing us through a Western academic lens that misses the mark?
And repeat that one more time. 'Cause that first part I did not hear.
Okay, so the credibility gap.
Yes.
Are authors like Yvonne Cheroux, Albert Robertu, and Katrina Hazard Donald truly credible, or are they viewing us through a Western academic lens that misses the mark?
Oh yes, the second part is true. Like it isn't like especially the first author you name. It isn't that they're just completely uncredible because I love that lady's energy. The Yvonne, she has a beautiful spirit, but she's misguided by the Pan African ideology, and in particular her. Like some of the other artists, individuals I'm not completely familiar with, but I've never seen a hoodoo article. I've never heard a hoodoo podcast or an individual who speaks with a Pan African ideology that was speaking truth, because it's not like they're like if you ask Yvonne, she will tell you that these are practices that the slaves already had during slavery when you're speaking of hoodoo, and it completely makes sense for people to think that, but it's just the fact that during slavery you had something known as root work, which is not exactly hoodoo. It's a part of hoodoo, but it's not the only component. Hoodoo is an organized, closed practice. It's very organized actually in its origins. And during slavery, this organization didn't exist. There wasn't an organized mojo hand all over the place. It was only in very specific communities in the beginning. And then it spread to all the regions. And that's why we talk about the 7 regions. And, now it's in way more than 7 regions. It's all over America. But so that's I think the issue is that a lot of times if you don't come from the families, the context is tough. So it's like if you are just a scholar and you're looking through the notes that are being given, like individuals who are paid to give interviews about hoodoo, and of course a lot of times they're just saying whatever, especially whatever you might want to hear. You want to hear about I'll make up something real quick for you. And so it's just that like a lot of the things I've heard her speak on and a lot of other hoodoo practitioners or hoodoo scholars speak on, you could tell is made up because there's no mentioning of the ancestral force, which I think you'll notice 90% of the time no one's talking about that. No one's talking about how important this concept of root work really is. And if you're talking about root work, you're talking about the ancestral force. It's the whole point is the root working is you're working the roots of the ancestral force. Like you're working with this spiritual component that's vibrating into our environment that comes from the ancestral forest that gives us an advantage, like almost trust fund like situation from a spiritual reach standpoint. And that's what makes hoodoo so special today. That's what made root work so powerful in its heyday, in its origins, during the slave revolts and during the Underground Railroad time periods. That's what we were working with. And that didn't have anything to do with Africa, because this place called Africa, like there wasn't 54 countries and there wasn't a billion Africans who all went by a construct known as Africa. There were hundreds of millions of Africans in the 1600s and the 1700s who only knew the name of their tribes and the tribes next to them that they might have been at war with or at peace with and trading with. But that's all they knew. They didn't have this context of a continent until modern times, because that's a European ideology. So that was pushed on them. So when they speak of Africa and when they speak of the ancestors, they speak from a lens of a Westerner, which is natural because we are Westerners, but they're speaking from a white person's lens. Like they're getting their scholarly, like you said, like the Jewish male that you mentioned earlier, like they're getting their talking points and the way they're going about trying to be scholars of who they're speaking in, in the way that white T spoke. And so that's where the issue is like they're thinking like that. Like there was no Africa. So there was nothing to take from an African place because there was no African place. There were tribes who had all kinds of different forms of what we would call juju today. And many of those forms are very unique. So you have many different unique forms of juju in the Americas. You did not have the specific closed off ancestral practice called hoodoo at that time. Like it took time to develop the ancestral force that hoodoo stands on today. Like that's why it's a closed ancestral practice, because there's these ancestors in the forest that we're using and drawing on to like almost like a cell phone tower, like having stronger reach. We can reach our ancestors in a way people have to sacrifice to reach the spirits in their pantheon, in their system of religion. We don't have to sacrifice anything because those ancestors were the sacrifice. So we have access to their spirits to reach particular ancestral spirits, and it's that trust fund type energy. The sacrifice has already been laid for us. So a lot of them don't have that context, and they're speaking of hoodoo as if it's an ATR or just some kind of European magic system. And that's the reason why it's so off, and why, like there's all this conflict of what it is or what it's not.
Question focused on identity, heritage, and the boutique versus the root. So Wicca and European ancestry, some of us have European ancestry.
Absolutely.
Right. So are Wiccan practices truly compatible with hoodoo, or is the draw towards Wicca simply a calling from the European ancestry many FBAs carry? Because I do see here, Black Americans who primarily, not primarily, but they'll do Wicca type things, and I just wondering.
I would say this: Wicca itself, like the guy named, what's his name, Gardner, because there's like different versions of Wicca today, but in its origins, the practitioner Gardner, I forget his first name, but I know his last name's Gardner, the whitey guy who created the system. What he was trying to do was create an actual ancestral practice for Europeans to draw on, to go back to their older ways. And the word witcha or Wicca is the more original term for witch and witchcraft. And now today we say witch and witchcraft because of the more outside community started calling it that towards the Europeans that were a part of these organizations. So they just took on those names too, witch and witchcraft, because that's what the outsiders called them. But he wanted to give it a more ancestral pull. So Gardner, the white man who actually created the system, the religious system of hoodoo, not hoodoo, but of Wicca, he was trying to create the same thing. It's very similar to hoodoo in the way that it's based on their European lineage. And I think what happens with Black people is that we have a religious context naturally, where most of us are Christian, 90% of us are Christian or Islam. So we're moving from this religious context into that religious context because it's more comfortable, versus being a free for all chaos magician, or tapping into magic on your own and not knowing where to start, or where it begins, where it ends. And I think that's where the reason why there's so many Black Americans who practice Wiccan beliefs and different forms of European witchcraft, because it has a more organized feel to it. And then you get to hoodoo and it appears to be completely unorganized. Like, you have to truly be on the inside to see the organized. I mean, it's super organized. The Mojo hand is a super organized understanding, super organized, so, but it doesn't look that way from the outside. And like we said, because it's so well gate kept, a lot of folks are not even interested in getting into that, so it looks like just this free for all, mix this, mix that, do what you want. Yet it's ancestral. It's like, how can you just call on all kinds of spirits, but we know it's an ancestral practice? So I think the confusion has a lot of Black Americans looking elsewhere, whether we're talking ATRs or Wicca, or, etc. But I don't actually think there's anything wrong with it. It's like a person wants to be Christian or whatever, you do that. But if you want to do hoodoo the right way, to where you don't get turned off or feel like it's not working for you, then that original context of the Mojo hand needs to be understood. That it's a spiritual, it's a philosophical, a spiritual philosophy, not just a bag. And just understanding our energetics, understanding the structure of it, has to be understood. Like, it's an exciting practice that has all these deep layers, but really, because of inner city hoodoo, we don't see that. Like, that is not something that you find in the inner woods hoodoo per se. Like, my grandmother, she was like, had one foot in the inner city and one foot in the woods, and she took a liking more to the inner city philosophy of just hide everything, get your money, and don't you share nothing with nobody unless it's the person you plan on passing it on to in your bloodline. That's it. And that's why we're in this situation.
We do know what divine timing is, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, when we do root work, when people do spell work, they want many want immediate responses, right? But with hoodoo, is there such a thing as divine timing? Does divine timing count in hoodoo?
Yes, because you got that. The thing about hoodoo harmonics and hoodoo vision, especially hoodoo vision, is you have all these people who practice. They read bones, they read feet, they read hands, they read in cards. All of that is true to hoodoo, always has been. But the thing that I can't, it's crazy. Nobody knows about the Seven Sisters calendar no more. And the calendar was based on divine timing. There's this idea, like, to get more detail about it without talking about the close, because it's like, if you don't know the exact dates of the like what month we're in, then, and what day it is, there's no way of sharing the closed aspect of the calendar. So I'm not giving, because we don't, I don't know who's all listening. We're not giving anything too much up, but just to explain the context of divine timing in this practice, there was the idea that women's menstrual cycles, which especially all the time, used to back in the day, when everybody was grounded, walking on the earth, it was 28 days. And there's a reason that universal concept is all over the world, because that used to be a natural context for the matriarch, when everyone was absolutely grounded. Like, women menstruated every 28 days. Not exactly the same 28 days, but every 28 days you could expect someone, a woman to have her menstrual cycle if she was not pregnant. And then you see this phenomenon when women are close enough to one another, they sync. So they'll be menstruating every 28 days at the same time. And we looked at it as it's a sign of divinity. I mean, it shows there's a divine timing, because the woman's ability to give life was considered the most divine gift. And this ability to menstruate is connected to her ability to give life. Like, we know that that's part of the process of conceiving, is she's, literally dropping eggs every time this process takes place. And, and if she doesn't drop, that means she's probably conceiving, like she's pregnant. So that is, like, when we looked at originally divine timing, it was connected to this ideology of a sacred calendar connected to women. And there's an idea that there was an original 28-day calendar. And in root work, based off of the indigenous origins of it, that calendar was given to the early first root workers by the indigenous people here in this land. And the saying was, this calendar that we use is the original calendar, the first time given, and it's never changed. You know, you'll notice in there's a concept of looking at time off of a turtle shell. So you got 28, not necessarily. You have like 28 notches, little notches on the outside of the turtle shell, and then on the inside you have 13 notches. So it's like, 28 days in each month, 13 months in each year, 14 on a leap year, and that 14 represented the entire turtle shell. So it's like on the leap year, you got a 14 month, and that 14 month has 2 days in it. So the outside notches represented 1 day, and the inside notches represented the second day. But that was how they kept up with the calendar perfectly, using the turtle shell. And there's this idea that, the same way we can feel people staring at us, or the same way we catch colds, like we'll catch a cold and you'll catch symptoms. And with those symptoms, you got discharge and all this stuff coming out of you. And we attribute that to a virus. This early matriarch believed that really there was no, they didn't believe in viruses. They believed that when people caught illnesses or even caught happiness, like they were catching vibes. So there was always this thing about like, if women are menstruating together and they're catching the same vibe and they're having discharge together and they're having the same symptoms and all of this, that's connected to this divine timing situation. They're catching vibes based on divine timing. So there's a heavy concept of divine timing in this practice. And it was a way that they tracked disease and also tracked the right time to do certain things from a protective standpoint, and also from a prosperous standpoint, to help certain workings proliferate and help certain things to stop certain things from occurring, to cut certain energies off. And so they were using that calendar to keep up with this whole cycle. In this culture, we call it the vultures of Turtles Island. Like those who master the calendar are typically considered vultures of Turtles Island. So, the Dr. Buzzards, that's where the concept of Dr. Buzzard really comes from. It wasn't no individual. It's a title given to certain individuals. It was never just one person, though. I mean, there's a lot of Dr. Buzzards. But so yeah, divine timing is definitely huge in this practice. So, and there's some people so naturally connected in with their ancestors and just naturally attuned, especially women in this practice. There's a huge amount of matriarchal practitioners that may not know all of these little detailed things about the mojo hand, none of this stuff, but they know exactly when to do the work. And when they do the work, it works for them, like every time they're doing it. And that just shows there's also those people who have a natural ability to connect in with the harmonic. Because when you think of a 28-day calendar, it's a perfect number. 28 is a perfect number. And like that's one of the things they said. Women their number is perfection, which is 28. And men's number is 6. Which is also another perfect number. Yeah, 6, 28, and then it's some number like 457, something way up there. And those are the perfect numbers from 1 to 1,000 from a numerology standpoint. But 28 has 5 harmonics. 1, 2, 4, 7, and 14. And they perfectly go into the number 28. So there are some people that they may not be using the Seven Sisters calendar at all. They're looking at the date on the Gregorian calendar, and they have no idea that somehow, some way, they're working on the 7th day of the Seven Sisters calendar, or the first day. They're working within those harmonics. And by using those days based on their connection to the ancestral forest, they're able to pretty much get anything they want off from a casting standpoint, from a working standpoint. And I've seen it. Like it's the weirdest phenomenon. I've had people who are new to the practice, and I would just watch, like ask them, when do you feel like doing it? Like, oh, you want to do this and this? So what day do you feel is going to be the best day for you? And watch them time after time pick the harmonic days. Because I have the calendar. So they'll tell me, oh, I'm doing it on the 8th. But I know on that particular day that, it just happened to match up with the 14th on the actual Seven Sisters calendar using our traditional time. And it just amazes me. I've never seen a male do it naturally, but I've seen well over 15 different females over the last, I'd say 10 years do it. Just constantly catching that time and having no context of the the calendar until I showed, like until it was showed to me. And it was just like, so there's definitely divine timing in this practice. And it's mostly the matriarch that seems to be able to catch it.
Purpose and life readings. Other practices offer life readings. How does voodoo reveal our specific purpose in life? Now, you don't have to get into the tools used, but yeah, that was my question.
You say, how does it reveal the specific purpose in life?
Yeah.
What I would say is that when we look at ancestral, like there's a concept in hoodoo. You got the 6 fingers, of course. The very last finger is hoodoo haints. And the thing about hoodoo haints is that it's actually connected to the realm of hoodoo haunts. Haunts are what we look at as potentially ancestors carrying a story, like a spirit or a ghostly type energy that's connected to an environment. Could be a haunt. It doesn't have to be in tranquil, nasty, or anything. It could be a super neutral or super positive. Haints are always negative and then tranquil. So, but there's sometimes these haunts that usually carry stories, and they can tell you a lot about your lineage and what your purpose is. So a lot of people who get deep into the ancestral practices, they develop those first 3 fingers so that they can really practice the last 3 fingers in a successful way. And then a lot of times they'll find out what their destiny is. Like there's people using astrology and all these things and their nodes and astrology to figure these things out as well. But there are some people that don't know the first thing about astrology. And I'm familiar with it, so I can use their chart and look at it as like, you are going in the right direction just using hoodoo alone, and you never looked at astrology at all. But they'll know exactly they're going in the direction of their nodes, according to astrology and things like that. And it amazes me that, and all they've had is all they've spoken to is their ancestors. All they've dealt with is ancestral spirits within this lineage. So absolutely, there are people who are using that to find their destiny and to find their paths, because that's what a lot of these ancestors in this forest that we call the ancestral forest are there for, to let people know specifically what you're here for and what you're supposed to do, in this cosmology of spirituality.
Okay, thank you for that. So the next category I want to get into is divination and the technical tools. Now, if a question is too in depth, because we don't want to give away everything, right? Because there
Yes,
will be non-lineage. Okay, just say skip that BS. Ready?
absolutely.
Thank you. So it's tarot versus oracle versus the word. Where do tarot and oracle cards stand in authentic hoodoo? Are they modern overlays, or can they be used as legitimate extensions of the work?
Well, I know playing cards for sure. I saw all of my elders using that system of divination. Like my big mama in our family absolutely was a card reader. She didn't use tarot per se, and I don't know the specifics of the tarot numerology. But with playing cards, it's it's based on it's like the same number of cards as there is weeks in a year, and so it's completely connected to the system of how time is working as far as like measure time from a calendar year standpoint and everything. So I know that it's something. I believe tarot cards as well can be tapped into. There's so many different divination tools, but I think they play a role. I think it really depends on the practitioner, though. There's some people doing it, and they're just playing with cards, and then there's some people who really are able to use those as a true divination tool. My grandmother could not, but her mother, or my big mama, her mother was a true card reader. My grandmother only could read hands and feet. She struggled with she didn't like the cards. It didn't do anything for her. Same thing with me. It doesn't do nothing for me. So I just don't even really try like that. But some people, they just know. They can feel it. It's in them. And I think those are the people who you'll know. You'll be able to feel it and tell like there's something about this that I'm drawn to, and there must be a reason for that. But when you look at the way playing cards are, it makes all the sense in the world, because that truly matches up with the nature of things and how time behaves.
Some people do use the playing cards to exchange out tarot. I love oracle decks. I even created 2 decks, and the people who have purchased both decks said they're very powerful decks. When it comes to tarot, the school that I learned from, I go back for refresher courses, right?
Yes.
I do. But my godmother now is opposed to me using tarot. She said, "You are, she tries to instill in me to just read, like just look at people and read, just know what it is." I think I read energy very well.
Absolutely.
Um, yeah, thank you. So she is opposed to me using tarot, and whenever somebody else comes that she trusts and starts reading, well, I don't want to give away everything, and they say, "Why aren't you reading tarot?" She really gets upset. It's kind of
Yeah.
funny, but I like the tarot cards, and ever since my biological mother transitioned, I did have a calling towards the cards, but I never put much time into it until recently. So I think it depends on the practitioner and what tools are comfortable for them. There are people that could just look at you and read you, and you be like, "Dang, feel all naked" and whatnot. Some people need the cards as a guide, and I'm okay with both. I love the oracle card because it gives you more use of your imagination, more use of your senses and stuff. But that's just me.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I get what your godmother is saying. There's something about, it's like there's nothing wrong. Like, I guess we have to look at all divination tools. Or anytime you're dealing with a tool, it's just like training wheels on the bike. It's just the training wheels are there to keep you from falling over and to help you see, ride with clarity, to move where for a fact you're not going to fall. So it is a good tool. But I'm guessing what she's saying is that you got to learn to take them things off, and because what happens if the cards are not there, but it's very important that you read this situation right away. And if you feel like you only can get true clarity when using tools, that might be where more so where she's coming from. Like, hey, make sure you're looking at this, like you practice both at least. Like, I think and that's what I would say, is just make sure both are being practiced. But I don't see anything wrong with any tool. Like, I think you can use any tool you like when it comes to divination. So it's just like, is it necessarily hoodoo? I think it depends on what you're doing ancestrally with the tool. Because it's not like you're. I guess it depends. I've had a tarot reader. I had one of my ex-girlfriends used to say that there are spirits on the tarot cards, and I remember she would lay them things around and stuff, and I'm like, "What is you doing? Putting them in the corners and doing all this stuff?" Because there's a spiritual, like, she was really deep into it, and there's some people like her who truly believe that the people who make those cards and go through the workings of that, they're putting certain spirits on those cards. And a lot of folks who are buying certain decks they know what's being put specifically on the cards by these deck makers. So I guess that does have to be considered, because the thing with hoodoo, it's no longer hoodoo the moment you bring an outside spirit into the practice. It's no longer hoodoo then. Now, it's one thing if you're using your own spirit, or if you're using the spirit of the ancestor, one of many ancestors that we all have here in Black America. It doesn't have to be one directly to your bloodline. It just has to be a Black American ancestor that's no longer around, and that's hoodoo. But so I think that might even also be where her concern might be, is what spirit is on the cards? Is there a spirit? That could be a thing.
You're supposed to clean your cards, though. You're supposed to smudge your cards and everything. And how you do that is up to you. Me personally, I love Palo Santo. I don't really like sage too much. There's Florida water, all these other things. However you clean your cards, that's personal to you and the cards. But you are supposed to clean your card.
And
I
when I
hope
say
people
that,
don't
what I
get too
mean
wrong.
is that what the young lady that I was dating at that time would tell me is that there were particular spirits locked into the card. Like, this card was made with a particular spirit in mind. And when you're drawing that card, it's that spirit that's potentially talking to you. But she did say it really, like, the practitioner had to do certain things in order to really draw on that spirit. But that spirit is present on those cards. But that was her philosophy. I've never been a tarot reader, so I don't know if that was just her. I never heard anyone else say it, but because I've never really researched the subject matter. But I think that would be something to look into.
You know, if she puts it that way, then I can see why. So if you get the Empress card, right? The Empress the Empress represents either a creative pregnancy, an actual pregnancy, things like that. The Fool represents new beginnings, stuff like that. The Hangman is like stuck in suspension. I think the Wands are the messengers of the. So they do represent people that hold a certain position. So if you pull a card, then you could expect, like they got the Knights, stuff like that. They got the Queens, they got
Yeah.
the Aces. Yeah, so she could be right. I never thought about that because the people who made the cards did make them with people in mind who it would represent, whether it was you or your client.
And seeing with playing cards, it's more of like a social structure. Like there's kings, there's queens, there's jacks, there's jokers. And these are things that Prince and like these are energies that you find in the social order. Like diamonds and spades. All of that. I don't think that those were made with certain spirits in mind. Which is why I know it has to be that way because it's always been prevalent in hoodoo. And hoodoo, you're just like, that's the biggest taboo part. And it's not that it's taboo, it just means that when you step into the realm of juju, the moment you're using spirits outside of your ancestral. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just, that's the hoodoo.
So, no, I'm wondering why New always tell me, I don't know, BX, I don't know that much, but he's answering every question. He also says that the playing cards are traditional. And he says when you go research the people who initially created the tarot cards, it was the people from the spiritualist movement from the 1900s.
Wow. And it makes sense because when you look at tarot, I know one thing it's absolutely connected to is Kabbalah. And and that Kabbalah is an interest. I like when we look at this whole thing with Epstein files, with files, my bad. But when we look at these things with all of these particular occurrences that are happening right now, the climate, and you look at the small hat community, just all together, man, like Kabbalistic practices. And if you're dealing with Kabbalah, you're dealing with the Khalifa. And if it's even if you're not aware of it, it's the very nature of the practice because it's technically it's like supposed to represent the tree of life, but it's speaking with the context of knowledge in mind. Like all of those sephiras and all of those points are really based in deep esoteric knowledge. And once you start dealing with the tree of knowledge, you're dealing with the Khalifa, which is the inverted tree. Like, that's now you're going into the other realm of things, so it makes it really interesting. Like, I don't know. And I kind of stay away from those areas because I know that that's something that if you're going to get into, you got to really, I've seen more people have issues because they, like I love Bobby Hemmett, but that was one of his big things. And I think that's kind of why things turned out the way they did, is that, that ain't nothing to play with, and that brother was deep with it.
Scare me today. Don't scare me today. I don't know what happened to Bobby Hemmett.
You said what?
What happened to him?
Oh, Bobby Hemmett. Oh, man. No, Bobby Hemmett, he's from Atlanta, so we in Georgia.
Okay.
I like to share this. I know how people get about talking about elders or, like some elders that are deceased, but there is a huge movement of elders falling by the wayside, like crazy things happening to them, who are practicing chaos magic, like Brother Panic, Bobby Hemmett were big chaos magic practitioners. They were heavy on it. And their concept was, you got melanin, you black, you can do whatever you want. Just practice, get your knowledge up, get your weight up. And I'm telling you, this man just, 10 years ago, there was a time where you could go to certain parts of Atlanta and maybe a little back further, but I think it was about 10 years ago. And he would just be at the liquor store corners, just out of his mind. And a lot of people kind of threw that under the rug because they didn't want to put that out there. But see, my problem with that is he got all these young folks that follow behind this and believe what he's saying is safe to do. And it's like, well, if you look at where it led him, I don't know if that's safe, because that I love Bobby. I love the brother. But I also felt like you just can't tell folks they can do whatever they want, because that's just not how the world works. You can't just do whatever you want. And these practices are very real. There's people getting messed up and people doing really big things on them all the time. But it's the that level of understanding. It might even be ancestral. Like, are we truly the ancestors that come from Kabbalistic practices? I don't know. But I've seen more people in our community not do so well at the end. Like, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years into it, it's like it don't end so well. And I don't know anyone that it has ended well. That's really really that's what they do, is practice those systems of magic and stuff. That chaos magic. So that's the only thing, is that I love Bobby Hemmett. I hated to see how things went for him, and you do know his protege, Brother Panic, passed away just very, very young, very young. And it's like they led a huge community of like the whole Sinetta TV movement. That whole movement really, in my opinion, led people astray. Like James Smalls, even just telling folks voodoo is everything. Everything comes from voodoo. You could practice, you could do this. And I deal with Black Americans all the time dealing with mental and spiritual psychosis because they jumped into one random ATR at the next and thought, because these are Black people like me, it's like these practices are connected to certain people's like these folks who are really in there doing it the right way, they have an ancestral tie to this practice. And they'll tell you quick, even the spirits they're dealing with are not their ancestors, but their ancestors have ties to those spirits. So they're more familiar with those spirits. Now, the whole ideology of familiar spirit, everybody ain't familiar with the spirits that they try to tie themselves to. So that's why I truly emphasize hoodoo for Black Americans. Like, these are your familiar. These ancestors are your familiar spirits. And they don't have a right to just, like, unless you're dealing with a hate spirit in hoodoo, you don't got to worry. Like, the only thing that spirit can do to you that's a Black ancestor is reject you. They can be like, nah, I'm not going to work with you. And that might be for your best benefit, because their energy doesn't fit you. Like, it could hurt you, and they don't have a right to hurt you. Like, that's one thing the ancestral force is all about, was setting up a safe, a safe gate for us to tap into our ancestry without having to worry about a kickback, because we're dealing with spirits. These are our ancestral spirits. So it's like we don't have that same issue. And when we do have that issue, it's because you're dealing with a haint. And that's why we have haint, all these different, the rhythm in the blue, haint blue bottle tree traditions. All of this understanding of haint blue to protect ourselves from the intranquil haints that do linger around, that can definitely lock themselves onto us. And they can lock onto us easier than any outside spirit because they're within your ancestry. So that's why we really...
About an experience, but that's going
What'd you say?
Tell you about an experience, but that's going to be in the back chat. Because today, but go ahead.
Oh no, I heard you. Yeah, I heard you say. You say you could tell me about an experience.
Yeah.
Haint scare a lot of Black Americans from moving. I've seen a lot of folks like, nah, my grandmother told me that was a haint, and that's why I don't mess with that stuff. And I went and then they'll go to an ATR, and it's like, doesn't mean it's unsafe, but man, there's so many variables that can make it unsafe. Like, you don't know if that house might be with some tether that does not have your best interest at heart. Like, they really trying to get in on, like, the whole fact that we see now over these last 2-3 years of delineation, that there are communities in the Caribbean and Africa that have been trying their best to destiny swap. And one of the easiest ways to do that is lock you into a spiritual house, take your stuff, take it from you, and absorb that. And I've seen it too many times to ignore it. And that's why I don't have no filter when it comes to. I feel like when it comes to ATRs, it's like you got to really be serious as a Black American. I still ain't met one yet that didn't have psychosis. I still ain't met one yet that was just a well-rounded, balanced, Zen, stoic individual that was practicing those practices. So I want us to be safe, and I don't talk about these things to get popular. I don't care about no following. I ain't looking for nobody's money. It's just but I end this. I do this all the this is what I do. So I can't help but talk about what I'm seeing. Majority of the Black folks coming to me are not dealing with their ancestry. They're dealing with something else, and then they're wondering why they're dealing with psychosis. And it's like, that's why, because the safe gate, the safety mechanisms are not up on these other people's systems for you. it's up on yours.
Wow. So I'm gonna go to the family Bible, right?
Yes.
For an for an FBA so long without a passed down Bible, how could they start a family Bible today? And is the King James Version a mechanical necessity for the work?
Oh yeah, that's easy. Absolutely. You can use any. I mean, I would try to get it as old as you possibly can, but and only because I've seen some of these really new editions. They just be changing everything. They be on some crazy stuff. But I would definitely, if just get one as old as you can get. It can be King James. It's pretty much all the same. The easiest way to start one is yourself. You write your name. It is so simple. You write your name in it as an elder, someone with children. Put you some 4-leaf clovers in there. Like, it's like my family Bible. That's what it's full of: 4-leaf clovers and signatures. Elders letting me know they was here, that they understood the assignment, and that this is being passed on for a reason. Like, this is for your workings. Because the thing about the Bible, it's not about being a Christian. It has nothing to do. Using that Bible has nothing to do with being a Christian. It has everything to do with being forced. And it's like, it's pulling on that energy. It's almost like, you put diamonds under pressure, or you put carbon under pressure, you create diamonds. We were forced, that's pressure, to use this book. So when we use those words, when we read those words, and when we pass those words out, it's a different energy that comes off, because there's an ancestral push behind it that knows that you didn't have a choice then, and because of that, now you have a loophole. It's like the nature of things is working for you through this book. So you can start a family Bible at any time. All you got to do is put your name in it. There are a few other things you can do to it that I would, but I can only say it in the background, because you can't let other communities know those particular things. But it's safe to say that you still can pass on a strong legacy from a biblical standpoint to your children, especially if you don't have any intentions of them using it to root work, using it to conjure. If they're going to use it to conjure, do root work, or to deal with hoodoo hands, then there's other things you got to do to it. But if you're just using it to manifest and try to attract positive things and some wealth and some health, man, put some 4-leaf clovers in there, and a winning ticket even is good. Like, you get you a winning ticket. It could be a ticket just to win a ticket. You could put that in the Bible and just but just make sure your name is signed in there. Get as many elders in the family who understand what the assignment is, though. They know they're signing their name because you plan to pass this on to your children. To keep, and you don't have to explain what they're going to use it as a spell book, but I want them to keep this just to, for their safety, for their health and their wealth. And as long as they're on that page, get as many elders in the family that are still alive to sign the Bible and pass that on to your children. And then do the same for them. Have ones where they can pass on to their kids, where they're signing and doing the same activities if they're into that. And that is one of the easiest ways to to start it. But I'll tell you, so I'll make sure I DM you a few other things that you put in there with it to make sure it's solidified, so that when your kids get it, it's a strong tool that ties them into the ancestral force.
So the next two that I wanted to talk about was mirrors and water, but you touched on hoodoo water already. So I believe mirrors. How are mirrors used as portals or defensive tools?
Because it plays into hoodoo vision, but it also plays on the energy of hoodoo water, because water is reflective and absorbing, and that's what mirrors do. They absorb and they reflect. So you're dealing with that energy. I can tell you this. I'm just keep it real with you, and I know this is not traditional hoodoo, but man, did it work. And all I did is I put some particular, I chose a particular ancestor that was about manifestation. They were really heavy with just a very successful ancestor. And I put the dirt on the mirror first. So I smeared it into this big old mirror that I bought. And then I made sure that, and I didn't clean it with a cleaner at all. I just smeared it in with some, what I would call hoodoo water, which is when you actually put herbs and stuff like that together with certain alcohols. And all I did, so I basically put mud, rubbed the mud into the mirror in a sense. But it was ancestral dirt from a particular grave site. And then I put a dream board over top of that mirror. And I know dream boards are not traditional to hoodoo, but it's something that really does work. I just put the things I wanted to achieve from a healing standpoint, career standpoint, what kind of house and cars I wanted in the future, what kind of money I wanted to see. Just a regular old manifestation board, a regular old dream board, and put that over top of that mirror. I have seen everything except 2 things manifest on that darn mirror, and I put like 20 different things on it, but everything but 2 things have manifested so far. And it's just so. I'm a big believer in like for me that is where that was the extent of my mirror work. I know my grandmother was more into using it as a divination tool, but she said it was dangerous. She said it's just one of those things that it's so easy to tap in, like to draw. It's a portal that for some odd reason, really depending on the workings you've done to the mirror, it makes it very easy for things to come through. So yeah, she was real sensitive about the mirror thing. She was like,
Yeah.
but she loved it.
I have a question though about portals too.
Yes.
Are the eyes portals and is the toilet a portal?
Yes, the toilet, especially the eyes, of course, the eyes, but the toilets are a huge portal. Like you can use your tears from your eyes in a lot of different types of workings, all because there's enzymes from a portal standpoint. From an internal portal, when you think about your white blood cells, the defensive system your body gives off, it stops cancer every single day, stops viruses every single day. You have viruses and cancers and all kinds of little pathogens trying to eat at you every day. They're trying to get at you. And there are enzymes that are birthed or that are related to the enzymes in those protective type cells that are found throughout your body, knocking this stuff off all day. It's stopping these things from taking you out daily. Because cancer is trying to get you every day, and most of the time it's stopped. It's only the few times it's not that we have a problem. But it's the fact that those same energies are found in the tears. Like tears have a very like when you think about even snake venom, it comes from behind the eyes of the snake. And the consistency of venom is very similar to the consistency of tears. Not the exact same, but it's very similar. So there's a lot of workings you can do from a combative standpoint, an attacking standpoint using tears. The enzymes in them though are so similar to a lot of the enzymes you find in venom, and that's one of the reasons why the snake's venom glands are behind their eyes. And that's why we look at the evil eye and the snake eye and all that. So the only reason why I guess we don't have venom glands or our tears aren't venomous is because we have feet. Like snakes have to have venom coming from that energy because that's how they're able to get their food to stop. They have no legs. But I think that's the only reason why our tears are not as actually potential, dangerous. Like animals that have legs, the only reason why that energy isn't a portal of death like it is for snakes, but it is a portal of defense and a portal of attack, definitely, because of the compounds that are in them. So for me, that's how I would look at tears, using it in that kind of workings. But when it comes to the toilet, oh yeah, like I don't know if I could say this on the thing, but my grandmother used to always talk about SHIT on the work all the time. She would talk about that all the time. She said, and then it's common throughout the world. It is not something that's exclusive to hoodoo. This is something that there's people all over the world been doing this for a very long time. The indigenous in this country used to do it. They would draw the symbol, like most tribes had a symbol. And before they would attack the tribe, they would draw the symbol of the tribe on the leaf or the stuff they were using to wipe their tail, and then they would bury that in the ground. Well, toilets work as because of the spirally nature, how it flushes down that portal, down that tornado spiral, that creates a portal. And so you can put names and organisms and all kinds of ways to work that stuff out. Like, and it seems silly, but it's like, that really it's powerful. Like, there's a reason, like, a lot of disease and dismay and distraught can be associated with that energy. And of course, depending on how it's used, it can also be fertilizer. But you also can look at it as it could be fertilizer. If you write that petition out properly, it could fertilize the situation. So if you make it nasty, you can fertilize the nastiness of what you're trying to get off. Or it doesn't have to be in tranquil. It could be, I'm scared to speak in public. I am scared to do this. I'm scared of folks for no reason. You can SHIT on your fears and insecurities as well. So it doesn't have to be necessarily a crazy thing. You know what I'm saying? So,
Y'all technique, y'all come back and let us know how it worked out for y'all, okay?
absolutely.
But so then I want to move on because we got like 2 more sections and then the close out. So this shouldn't really take long.
Okay.
We should be finished by 10. If you're okay to skip to 10. Okay. So the next section, and here again, you could tell me you skip it, BX. So it's sacred protocols and domestic magic. And the first one I have, the category is offerings and the honey protocol. So how do we know the ancestors accepted an offering? And is it safe to consume honey that has been sitting on an ancestral altar?
Mm, if it's, yeah, if you are, and me and New Arrows were just talking about this earlier, and I think it's very safe to share this with the public. I was very surprised he knew about it though. I was like, wow, like that's not something that most people know about. But there's this concept known as memory jars. So of course you got honey jars, you got sweetening jars, you got money jars, you got all kinds of different jars, negative versions of that as well, war jar and all that stuff. And the thing about a memory jar is that usually that's what people put on the ancestral altar. And on those jars, you'll have all kinds of ancestral items connected to it. Which is why even as I share this, it's still closed because who has your ancestors' items? Only you. Who has the ability to tap into your ancestry as a Black American? Only you. So that's what makes Hoodoo closed, is that the ancestry is closed. Not so much the techniques. People are using similar techniques all over the world, but they're not able to tap into your situation. Even though everybody wants to, they can't tap into the rhythm and the blues like we can. And the thing is that if you're putting those items on that jar and the substance that you decide to put into the jar happens to be honey or happens to be an oil, or maybe it's something like tobacco or something that like some kind of incense or whatever like that, like you can use those substances to connect into that ancestor, to have prolific dreams, have vivid connection astrally with them. Like especially if you're trying to you write what you want, you put it under the pillow because it's a question you really want to get across, and a lot of times you're able to pick up on certain understandings and get clear messages, sit down and have a direct conversation with that ancestor, all because you have a memory jar that has all their items connected to it, things that are exclusive to you, it's understandings connected to the jar, because you can put sayings, things they would say, things they would do, pictures of stuff that is respecting their memory. And it could even be a Black American ancestor that you don't have a direct tie to, but that means you got to have a great understanding of that particular ancestor. And honey could be one of the many things you could put inside of the jar to consume the situation, basically to have an embodiment of the situation, to have a closeness to it, and to show a certain level of understandings that as I petition you and have, maybe even put things on the jar that's asking particular questions, or just pointing out particular characteristics for you. I'm also consuming those stories. So I'm talking about your story. I'm asking maybe questions on this jar about your story to get clarity. And then I'm consuming the substance. I'm smoking the substance. My grandmother likes snuff. So, you're putting the stuff in your jaw, nasty snuff. You're doing whatever to get a direct connection. And, so yes, honey, but it just needs to be really tight closed. It needs to be a jar, don't let it get contaminated with anything, but absolutely you can consume things off of your altar, especially when you have ancestral understanding. Just don't be putting any kind of spirit on that and doing that, because man, you never know what you might be consuming in.
Yeah. But for the food, how do you know if the ancestors like your food? Because you know why how I got that question?
Yes.
A few years ago, there was a meme going around, and the meme said the ancestors don't want you cooking for them when you know no, don't cook for the ancestors when you know you can't cook.
I
Something like
believe that.
that.
Absolutely. If you know you don't cook well, and that's the thing. It's like I really wouldn't cook for an ancestor that I never cooked for before. I think that is a very exclusive practice. I think there's people laying plates out for High John and they doing all this, and it's like, man, that's where the context of understanding the spirits really comes in, you know, and that's where it can get dangerous because High John's an avatar. Like that comes from the end. That is literally the epitome of the ancestral forest, the John Does that were buried. Like it's not a particular person, you know. So this idea, oh, he ate pork, he like this and this and that. People just made that stuff up. Like that ain't. This has never been.
Really?
Yeah, like that wasn't
Oh,
never a spirit of a actual. It was the spirit of man. It's the spirit of sky. It's the spirit of roots. You know, it's like High John has 4 names that teach you about the layers of nature. You know, it's the nature of things, and you know, and it's really like our concept of yin yang. You got High John and you got Big Mama. That's like Mother Earth and Father Sky. So that's our rhythm in the blue is our chi. Our yin yang is Big Mama and High John because they deal with the rhythm in the blue. You know, and then the way you practice and express the rhythm in the blue and deal with the yin yang nature is through the mojo hand and the 6 fingers. You know, so like I said, Hoodoo's very organized. It's very organized. And, you know, but as people tried to Africanize it and started ad-libbing with it because it became very profitable to practice regardless, they started doing all these things. I'm going to layer, you know, make some pork and some cornbread. And it's not to say that those don't work, but I have never heard of anything in particular High John likes to eat. You know, I have heard some stories about pork, so I can get where the pork part comes in, where he cooked pork for a slave master, or he was cooking pork one time, the slave master came in on him, and, you know, in the story, he was like, you know, lying about whether it was pork or raccoon and all of that stuff. So I can get that part. And High John is connected to the maroons, you know, so I do understand, but it's just like, you know, it's very hard to use an avatar. Like, unless you have a direct Big Mama, I wouldn't be trying to feed Big Mama anything unless you know your Big Mama and what she like to eat and she like your cooking. Like, maybe she only likes your cake, so you make only that cake for her to show respect and understanding, because that's what Hoodoo's all about. It's respect and understanding. We don't have to sacrifice anything, but we do have to have respect and understanding. But the understanding part can get a little tough because, you know, what are the true stories of, you know, these particular, you know, avatar, you know, like especially like a Big Mama and High John. Like everyone has their own Big Mama, so that one's particular to you, so you can work with that. But High John, not everybody has a High John. High John was, you know, like a avatar spirit over all of us, so it's very unique. And, you know, it's hard to say that there's particular foods to put out on him. He doesn't even, you're not really a man like that. So,
God.
yeah.
So, New Ever said they confused him with John Henry.
Oh,
They
that's
should have
fine.
made him a plate. So I guess he's talking about John Henry. And then he says it's better to cook for John Henry.
I believe that. Like, absolutely. Like, it would be, if I could cook, I'm not a big cook, so I don't do a whole lot of cooking for ancestors. But for those reasons, you should only be doing, whoever gave that advice, do it right. You should only be doing that if you know how to cook. But, you know, and John Henry, I'm sure, has certain foods associated with him directly. But because I can't cook, I never dealt with the cooking side of tapping in. I deal with the tools more so when I'm dealing with John Henry. More
Can you
than
tell me who John Henry?
John Henry was an Appalachian black man who was famous, as a statue actually, you know, up there in the area he was living in. I believe it's West Virginia. And he basically has statues up there showing where he worked on the railroads and he outdid machines. Like when they first built the steam machine to help with the building of railroads to basically replace the man labor, he went up against the machine to show that man could still outdo the machine. And he won, but he died in the process. And so it's like John Henry's like a spirit that's connected to the understanding that we can overcome the machine. but at what cost? And is it worth it? So it's like, a lot of people who are trying to better their career use John Henry, but with the understanding of work-life balance. It's like what John Henry should teach us is that work-life balance is important, because this man died of a heart attack, basically. His heart stopped because he just overworked himself. So it's one of those energies. It helps you, like with AI right now, it can really help a person conquer AI. And at the same time, maybe start developing avenues in the process of developing their career to get off from underneath the fear and the potential of being wiped out by AI, by moving completely out of basically it's like he became infamous after he died for, in the name of working hard. So it's like the energy of becoming infamous with John Henry is possible, but what's going to die? Is it going to be the spirit of you just working hard for someone else, or you can kill that spirit and develop the spirit of being self-made? So it's that energy of moving it from being a hard worker for YT to being self-made is what John Henry really helps us with. So that's what that spirit is. Yeah, he beat the machine, and the machine is corporate America as well. So he beat it.
Wow. So I do have you're gonna get a little spicy. So schmecks and glamour magic. Are these truly effective for manifesting a mate, or are they boutique distractions from the actual domestic science of the investor?
I honestly, glamour magic and inner woods food, like it was one of the most important things. So glamour magic would be considered youth magic, like basically to maintain your youth, which automatically when you maintain your youth, you maintain the attractiveness. Like it's like everyone grows into an attractive creature most of the time, and that's why we end up with mates. So we want to maintain our attractiveness so we can have a mate. But in its traditional sense, it was maintain your attractiveness because you already more than likely had a mate in them times. Like you had a man and woman in the middle of the woods having to survive. So it's like if I'm 100 years old, I still got to plow this land, but my back needs to work, my legs need to be strong, my arm, everything needs to be strong. Nothing can just break, because if I can't get out and do my part, we're not going to survive, the seasons to come. So everyone needs to stay healthy and strong. So glamour magic was around staying robust. And in the process, of course, it keeps you glamorous. Like, like these old time voodoo workers would stay very attractive because they were not aging, like very well, they were using that workings to anti-age in a sense, so that they could perform more so than just be beautiful from a shallow standpoint to attract a mate. It's being used for that today. And I think that's why a lot of times, a lot of my clients, they come too, and they dealing with a crazy partner that putting their hands on them and doing all this stuff to us. So it's like, what are you attracting? Because, a hunter, a narcissist can love beautiful things too, so it's like that. I don't think glamour work will attract a good partner as much as it would just attract a partner. So be very careful about those things. That's an interesting energy.
I want to move on to Big Mama. I do have a question about Big Mama. So I have here Big Mama in the hat. Who is Big Mama, and how do we hear her voice? What is the difference between a hat and a boo hat? Because I saw one of your posts about a boo hat.
Yeah.
And what is the audible warning of a spirit saying hat?
Now, a hag is tradition, like the word comes from European culture. And the reason why, now there's a concept in our culture that comes out of Gullah Geechee culture. When these Bulum Inkisi slaves, these rice farmers, were brought to the Americas, they ran into the Gullah Ogeechee people, and they were enslaved together. And the Gullah Ogeechee mixed with these Bulum Kisis, and they became the Gullah Geechee after that. And then in that community of the Gullah Geechee, there was this development known as the Buhag, which was the spiritual hand of this union. So these were the individuals who became very much so tied into the Gullah Ogeechee people's spiritual systems, the indigenous systems to America. And that's, so when you hear Boo folk, that's why they were called Boo folk, because these were the particular folks in the enslaved community, and even in the maroon community that was working different types of workings on white tea in slavery, because these people were eating folks, they were graping, and they were doing all the sticking them on trees, like basically picnicking, like the whole concept of a picnic, and they was doing all this stuff to them. So there had to be some get back, and the get back was sometimes poisoning, sometimes using substances, and then other types of workings would involve using a spiritual basically these blue folk would tap into their own spirits, or they would use the spirits of some of the people hurt in those intrinsic ways and tap into those spirits. And that's where the remember we said the 6 fingers of hoodoo, the hoodoo haints, those hoodoo haint practitioners, the masters of that practice, were the Boo folks originally. And when they would do this, they would create these almost Casper-like energetics. And it really wasn't them, it was the persona of them tapping into that haint spirit. And so now your spirit's tapping into this spirit, and together they're like a Casper moving in on YT in their bedroom. And this is what YT is seeing. Now YT has this concept of a hag in their culture, and then they call them in particular boo hags. And the reason why they call them boo hags is because boo for them means frightened. That's just when you're frightened of something, like like the boo, when something says, like a ghost says boo, it frightens you. So they were frightened, so they called them boo. And then they called them hags because the way they looked and appeared, they considered it to be some type of a witch or a hag, because the word hag comes from witches. And so they gave us the name Boo Hag, and we started, and because, we didn't mind the name, it was like, hey, we're doing this for a particular reason. So Boo Hag eventually became Boo Folk. And so there's these people who don't necessarily do any of those things, but they're connected to the same culture that the Boo Hag comes out of. And that's the female version of this haint worker who's basically attacking white tea. And so that's where the Boo Hag concept comes from. But in the Boo folk is the community of workers that the Boo Hag comes out of. There's also the Boo Daddy, who is the male version of the Boo Hag that, basically the white tea would call them Boo Hags too, but because we looked at, once we realized what hag meant in their culture, we're like, well, that's more of a woman. So yeah, that's Boo Daddy. He ain't no woman. He ain't a Boo Hag, he a Boo Daddy. And so that's where you get the concept Boo Daddy and Boo Hag in our culture from the Boo folk. So yeah, it could be negative. It did, and it has turned negative even on some of us sometimes. So in more modern culture, that's one of the reasons why hoodoo also became a taboo and a scary thing. I would say 90% of the scary aspects of hoodoo comes from the Boo Hag. So they've done, like, there's been an injustice, and I come from Boo folk culture. So it's like there is elements in our culture that has a lot to do with why, our own people don't want to touch this. Because they think that's what it all is, and that's really not what it is. My grandmother was a Boo Hag. I'm Boo folk. I've never been a Boo Daddy. I've never done any of that type of working, but I saw that firsthand. But that doesn't mean, like you have a choice to do that or not do it. As someone who comes in this family, and I always made the choice not to do it. And my grandmother knew I didn't like it either. I would tell her too, I didn't like this. She would. So, but
So, Big Mama, is she grandma or any of the great grandmas? If she's a great grandma, you don't have to say the number. We'll figure it out.
Oh, no.
Like everybody don't have to know it.
Big Mama my big mother was my great grandmother, but Big Mama Avatar, Big Mama is just like High John. High John's connected to every Black American in America. Big Mama is connected to every Black American in America. We may not know nothing else about hoodoo, but you done heard High John and High John the Conqueror. You may not know anything about hoodoo, but you've heard of the concept Big Mama. And that was original to this practice in the sense that, it's like our yin yang. So Big Mama represents, in original cosmology, the red path. Very important concept. Very important to understand too. Like really the most important energies to understand in hoodoo is Big Mama and Hygiene. Because it's like Mother Earth, Father Sky, red and blue path. The sky is blue, the earth is red. And that's why even the original Mojo bags were red. So It's a lot. There's a lot that goes into it. But absolutely nothing that we have to hide. It's so important for us to know that that there's nothing more important than the big mama energy. So if you got a big mama, even if your big mama was a sanctified Christian, if she took on that title, what she signed up for was being the big mama, like basically being you could basically make a memory jar. You can have a direct connection with Big Mama Mammy energy, because that's what we called it back then, Big Mama Mammy, because of what she was forced to do during slavery and how she, her workings and how how firsthand she was dealing with white tea and helping and protect us. So it's just like anyone in your family that took on that title, you can, even if, like I said, they could have been a sanctified Christian, never touched anything spiritual, hoodoo, root work, none of that stuff. Doesn't matter. You shouldn't have taken on that title, because if you took on that title, you set yourself up to be the medium for the Big Mama avatar in your bloodline. And that's on purpose, so that everyone who practices has a direct link. That doesn't mean you'll hurt that person or anything. It just gives you a figure to speak to when you're speaking to Big Mama, the avatar energy that's at the epitome of this practice. That's more important than High John, as far as I'm concerned. The earth, the sky comes out of the earth. Like our sky, our atmosphere, all of this comes out of the volcanic vents of the earth. So the sky comes out of the earth. That's the most important energy.
For this category is graveyard dust. Is it a dangerous breach of protocol to bring graveyard dust into a living space without foundational training?
Oh yes, like you just saying, like getting random graveyard dust. Absolutely, I
Right. Well, even your ancestors, right? Because I'm supposed to do a genealogical tour. What that is I'm going to go to my ancestors' grave sites just to see the conditions. One, I know in Alabama looks pristine. It's like a family plot. Um, but the other ones, when I ask people to go and look, because there's people in the South that will literally get up and go to the grave sites and take pictures of the conditions. They don't know, they can't make it, they didn't find the plot. So I'm thinking if I go out there and just look for myself, I'll be a little bit more satisfied with some things, right?
yes.
But is there a protocol? Like, can I bring home the graveyard dirt and stuff? Because I hear a lot of people talk about graveyard dirt, but I'm kind of skeptical. I don't like the graveyard.
If it's your ancestor and you have a relationship with them, yes. But what I wouldn't recommend though is that, say, like, if hoodoo water, if this practitioner, if they've got all this protection, like when I say hoodoo water, that means protection. Like I know that a person understands hoodoo water, their protection game is strong. So they've got ink blue everywhere. They know how to use it. Their floor washing is on point. The protective barriers are on point. Yes, their hoodoo harmonics is on point. Like they understand all the cosmology that goes behind the rhythm and the blue. And they have hopefully some type of ancestral protection up at that time. Like they have ancestors they speak with directly. So you have protection. You have protection, and you have the vision to know that if your senses, not just your eyes, but your senses itself, you come upon the dirt and it says, nah, leave that alone. And you know that how to really hear yourself when when it's warning you about certain things, that sense goes off, then you walk away. But if you feel very good about it and you are balanced in your hoodoo vision, like it's balanced, then absolutely you can collect the dirt. Now, what you would lay down is the problem, because you really have to understand the answers. Everybody get to talk about pennies and stuff like that. And I've never liked that idea, because it's like, yeah, a real penny is a real metal, but who said anything about that particular ancestor caring anything about, white tea face on some money? It's just like it's individualistically based on, like I say this, if a person has graveyard dirt from their ancestors and they did it the right way, they actually have a connection, or they have the, like ancestors, they have what we call cremated remains and stuff. Like they're the ones who left with those. Like you are so lucky to have those things. So those of us who have that, that is a huge advantage in this practice because of all the things that you can do in the presence of it, or what you can do with those things. Unfortunately, some people, really mess their lives up messing with it the wrong way. But it really is something you got to respect because that's somebody, that's their land, that's the bed that they lay in. Like that's their place, their home. So for you to take on their essence or the energetics, and they're absolutely in the dirt. Like all we do is turn to dust when we're in the ground like that. So they're in the dirt, and so it's one of those things where it's like if you don't know what to give that ancestor because you don't know them, I would be very mindful of actually collecting their dirt. There's so many other dirts you could work with for just basic hoodoo practices. Like that's a really okay, I'm really getting deep into this, and I got plans to do some real strong, heavy ancestral workings, even with this particular ancestor. Like we have a bond, or I have a true understanding of them. Like the stories were handed down by a trusted source, and I know what to give to them. I know where to put them from an altar standpoint. I know exactly what to do, and I feel comfortable about it. And my protection is on point. Because it ain't about you protecting yourself from them per se. It's about you protecting them from all the things you got going on. Like if they're resting their laying place and you bring them into an tranquil environment, that can be a violation. So that's the main thing. Like ancestors will not hurt you. Like that's that. So I'm not saying that they'll attack you. Like unless that was a hate. Like you got an ancestor that was passed away because they were in a very intranquil way, or they were a very intranquil person and did a lot of intranquil things. Oh yeah, then you ask for trouble then, because that's like bringing the hate right into your house. But and if you watch Beloved, you'll see how hate's hey, that's a so that's the thing, and that's real. I've seen that firsthand. Yes, nothing to play with.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
So Nu asked, what about red brick dust? I think he said.
Yes, red brick dust. Oh yeah, like that's safe. I mean, because the beautiful thing about red brick dust is that our ancestors, like when you think about bricks, like our ancestors' blood is in the bricks of this country. Like we built the early roads. If you can go and get the bricks from an early road, like in Savannah and everything, like I got some brick dust from Savannah, early old roads they got down there. That's powerful dust. That's powerful brick dust. And then, and like I said, it's not about, there's plenty of people in their cultures getting red dirt and they'll add their blood to it just off of the fact that, oh, the dirt's red and my blood's red and there's got to be something significant to this. So plenty of people do this. But when we do it with the dust from this land, it's a very powerful protective. I mean, it isn't even about protection. It's about the content of iron in the dirt that makes it red. What's making it red is iron content. And man, there's so much you can do with red brick dust. Like the basic practitioner can get rich, or they can get poor, or you could do so much with it. You do a lot, because iron, when you understand how it works in nature, like stars, stars go through these transformations. They produce helium and hydrogen and all of these elements. When the star gets to the point where it produces iron, once it gets to that stage where iron is produced, it literally collapses instantaneously. And in that instantaneous moment, all the other elements on the periodic table of elements is made. If I'm not mistaken, iron is like element number 7 or 9 on the periodic table. So the other elements, all the other 50, all of that is made in like the blink of an eye, like instantaneously, all because iron has been created in this star, and it causes an instant transformation, an instant transmutation. And that star goes from being what it was to being now a ghost that produces galaxies, or produces solar systems, I should say, producing solar systems. So our solar system was a star that once exploded and turned into a solar system because it produced iron. Iron is the catalyst that causes stars to go through that transformation. So iron is a huge transformative tool. You can really use it as a catalyst for a lot of different things, and especially destruction. I hate to say it, it's something about destroying things or protecting environments from really intranquil energies and putting the right workings on that dirt. And you could really take something that was trying to get in, like someone sent something your way. And a lot of people say that, well, return to sender game. That's one of the best ways for a Black American to return to sender to anyone else, anyone that's coming at you. And it's going to probably go back if you work the dirt in the right way, like put the right energies, the right petitioning and everything in it. It can really get back on the one trying to do whatever they're doing to you in a nasty way. And if they don't have certain protections up, they in trouble.
Right.
You know?
New says, and we got iron in our blood. I got an iron deficiency. I better go get me some iron. Well, some leafy greens, right? Because I don't want to take the meat.
And that's why we tell people, use your blood. If you get the brick dust, especially from like the older it is, the better. It's hard to find places with old brick roads still. But if you can get that old, it really works regardless. But it really works best when it's old bricks, or get you just some really good red dirt. Like that red dirt is also good. Here in Georgia, we got a bunch of it. So it's like, that's a good tool. Because it's all about the fact that, our ancestors' blood is in that but it's really in them roads in that harsh way. So it gives us the ability to put up protective barriers that are heavy, or strong. So that's why we use it. Yeah.
Question, because some people may hear this on the replay and think something crazy. So when you said the red brick dust, or get the red brick dust and use your blood, you don't mean prick yourself and you meant that the blood of our ancestors are in these bricks.
Oh no,
correct?
I mean prick yourself. Yeah, prick yourself. Absolutely.
Okay.
Like that's what gives it a intimate. Say like, okay, I'm just putting a barrier of red brick dust around my house for protection. And people do that. I'm putting it at a doorstep, or just all kinds of things you do. People put it under the bed. They do all kinds of stuff for protection. Against even haints. They don't have no haint glue. They don't know how to go through the process of making it. So they get red brick dust. It works well. Especially if you get the mold bricks, you crush it down, and then you prick your finger, and then you basically put the blood in there, and you mix it in there really good to where it doesn't clump, but it's like you mix it in that dust so well that it's evenly distributed. Like don't put a lot, just a couple of drops. One drop is more than enough. It's just your seal, like your blood seals that deal, in a sense. Like it'll cause a automatic connection to the fact that our ancestors' blood is literally in the bricks. Like if you go back in that time period, it would be blood flowing over those bricks as they were building them, and they were getting hurt and stuff, doing stuff to them in the process. Sometimes it would just be in Savannah, especially, just blood all on, in the streets. So we're really like, it's a thing of activation. So it's like, say you're doing it for money. Maybe you're doing some kind of workings to protect your money, and somebody's trying to come after your money. They are in trouble with that level of activation. Now here's where it's like, okay, the context can get a little weird, because say you go after some, like it really depends on the individual. If we're talking about someone in our community, that brick dust is not about to destroy their lives, in a sense, because like you're returning the sender to them. It will teach them a lesson. It's like because it's their ancestors as well. So but the ancestors gave us whoopings all the time. So it's like they'll get whooped. They might get taught a lesson. And they can go as far as like maybe taking from them what they were trying to take from you, or and I'm not saying people doing necessarily spell work, but you do this working to protect your finances, and there's someone who's trying to sabotage you, and they happen to be of the same lineage. They'll learn a lesson. They'll teach them a lesson. But people outside of our community, it'll crush them. It'll do what happens to the star. Like it can get real crazy for folks messing with a Black American who understands the power of red brick dust, and they've activated and know how to use it. It can crush them, just like stars. Like iron crushes stars and completely turns them into ghost towns that we call solar systems. So
Lou also says red clay. He's asking, can red clay too?
absolutely, it works. Is it as effective as the bricks? No, because of the ancestral direct tie into these early roads. So it's like there's New Orleans, Savannah, any of the old towns with them old red roads that our ancestors built. There's always going to be cream of the crop brick dust. But then the second thing would be red clay, which absolutely works, especially depending on that particular practitioner's ability to petition. Like, just their energetics with the ancestors, the ancestral respect that hopefully they've garnered or had. That would absolutely make it to where that red clay could work just as strong as those bricks. But the bricks, even if you don't have a great connection, it's like that's a cheat code for us. Now, if White T goes and get the brick, like, I feel bad for him. That'd actually be very dangerous for them because our blood is so heavily tied into those actual bricks of those early roads and stuff like that. But when we do it, it's like a cheat code. You ain't got to have no real, you just got to know, let me put my blood in this brick dust and let me mix this up and get this scripture for protection, whatever, burn this into it, mix this up and put that around my area, and that's golden work for you. Like you ain't, and if that's all that person knew, plenty of of our ancestors who were amateurs in the practice, they weren't interested in becoming professionals, but they knew how to do that, to protect themselves from hates and from other people from throwing things at them or just people's bad intentions. Because we catch vibes from people all the time. That's how we get colds and flus and all that.
Right? And so now we go to the category cinematic representation and the path forward. The first category is combating ethnocide. While Hollywood is erasing authentic FBA presence in films such as Having a Haitian Child plays the role of our beloved ancestor Sarah Rector, constant casting of Cynthia Erivo in major FBA Solon ancestral roles, and also casting many black male Brits, Ryan Coogler's Sinners is deemed to be credible and revered regarding its history and also of its hoodoo elements. Would you agree or disagree?
I disagree. Yeah, unfortunately, he had an I mean, and it isn't that he had an opportunity; he blew it. Ryan Coogler, I don't think was aware, enough. Like I think he really felt he was doing, because when you think about the movie, there's particular scenes that's an issue. Number one, the lady from England, the black lady, I think she's Nigerian lady from England, speaking with a country accent, like they do really good cosplaying though. Like, boy, they do a good job though. And it's just like, man, she played this part and I knew something was off the moment she said Ashe. I was like, Ashe what? Ain't no hoodoo, no Delta hoodoo, ever, no, none of that existed in no black belt hoodoo, no Delta hoodoo, no Louisiana hoodoo. If it was going to exist anywhere, you would have seen it in Louisiana, and it wasn't even there. Wasn't nobody even talking about no Ashe in Louisiana. There was no Geechee hoodoo, no Low Country hoodoo, no Tidewater hoodoo. None of us in none of these 7 regions is talking about no Ashe. So it was like I knew it was about to be some BS after that. Like I was like, oh man, please don't tell me they about to try and tie Orishas into with a hoodoo lady. And they kind of left it at that. They didn't do much more. They ain't talk nothing about no Orishas. I don't remember hearing nothing crazy like that in that. But then we get to the scene where homeboy is singing very well. The black American kid who's the main character as far as the singer, like the main character singing the blues, and the ancestors when they're all coming into the environment, and we get the African clown guy. I don't even know what they call that over there in Africa. That clown figure that dance around and he jumps from one side. It's supposed to be a spirit, some type of spiritual entity. But that ain't got nothing to do with no hoodoo, because hoodoo is just a Negro sport, an African sport. There is no hoodoo in Africa, and I think the thing is that Ryan Coogler, I'm sure he did his research, and this is why Pan Africans are lucky that they're in our lineage, because boy, like there's a lot of Pan Africans that just don't understand, like how on the fence they are with certain ancestors when it comes to just things that would like to be done, because they are causing so much destruction in this community, and they don't understand, like they're undermining us as we try to save them. And because there is a huge Pan-African movement that started publishing this concept that HUDU comes from Africa. So hoodoo most definitely comes from Africa because they found this word HUDU. Now the problem is these fools didn't understand that HUDU is a dialect in the UA culture. The EWE people, it's a tribe, it's a community of people over there in West Africa, and that is a dialect. It's one of 19 dialects in their culture. There is no such thing as a practice known as hoodoo or even a word known as hoodoo over there. It's a dialect called hoodoo. It's one of the 19 dialects they have. Nothing to do with a spiritual, nothing. And then and then unfortunately also because the Pan-African movement that started over 100 years ago has been so instrumental in turning hoodoo into a word for everyone. And my grandmother used to tell me that the reason why no one's ever fought the concept of hoodoo being a word is because it worked for those who wanted to keep it inside. It's like, yes, hoodoo as a word conceals almost everything. Hoodoo as a question reveals almost everything because it's a question. It's 6 questions, in fact. And it's just like, because most people don't know that, though, it's caused this disconnect. So people are looking for a word in Africa, like even the Pan-Africans who are just sincerely trying to find themselves, they're looking for this word, and it was never a word in the first place. It's hoodoo, the question. We have a thing with vernacular and the way we spell, like we like in Gullah culture, we say the or the, and we spell it DE. So it's like that's how we spell it though, DE. That's how it's spelled. But the and the is THE. So we've always had this way of flipping words, twisting things up with our vernacular, and even making it, making slang out of it as we write it out. Like we've done that with everything. We made bad mean good. It's just that's how we do language. It's how we've done this culture. So it's the same thing with hoodoo. Hoodoo is just one of those words where, yeah, it looks like a word, but it's really a question, and you just have to hear yourself. And because this practice is all about using that one sense and understanding how it's everywhere. It's a rhythm in the blue is all it is. It's a rhythm in the blue, and it's all over. And depending on your relationship with it, depends on how far it goes, how close it is to you, how far out it can, all these things. So it's just, that's the problem with it. It's like, man, they messed it up with that movie because they didn't understand. So I'm not mad at Ryan. I think he genuinely thought he was doing the right thing, because he's stated personally how proud he is to be a foundational Black American. That's one of the reasons why he made the movie, was to go back to his direct roots. So I don't think that man meant any harm, because had he meant harm, he would have Wakanda it big time. Like, he really would have had a whole bunch of stuff. And I think he truly thought, well, hoodoo comes from Africa. So when I have these ancestors coming in from the African continent in particular, that's to represent the origins of this practice, not to disrespect Black Americans, but to really represent the origins. And the problem is that because of these Pan-Africans making HUDU supposedly the source of hoodoo, it caused him to be misinformed. Because I know he did his research, and I know that's what we saw. And it's unfortunate. So
Yeah. So, in light of the right, Hollywood is heavily contributing to it. There's a demand for us to, FBA so long, to play our own role. Yes. They want to see us on the film again, outside of Ryan Coogler and Tyree Bashir with his lovely documentaries, right?
Yes.
So tell me, would you tell your own story? Would you produce or take a lead in film?
You know what? Taking a lead in it, like I wouldn't mind helping someone creating the story, but I think it would be very dangerous with what I know I'm supposed to do to be really public. Like it would be. It's like we have the element of surprise in so many ways. I think by someone like me staying as hidden as possible, but still having this inside community That's understanding that this is the real thing. Is we were talking about the real thing over here, but we don't need everyone still to know just how it really gets, type thing. So it's like, but putting it out there, I would love to do that. Like, helping, we got AI now, so even just whatever, I'm talking to folks that people talking about animated things and maybe some books and things. I can see that. Like some Southern Gulf based literature, really speaking on Blue folk culture, because we have a hell of a story. But I think it would be very dangerous to be like, okay, putting my persona, being me, directly out there, because there just ain't many more of us left. So it's like, and then I'm one of the youngest one in our community. So it's really one of those things where it's probably best to stay in the background.
You would produce
Oh,
stories,
absolutely.
but you wouldn't be like the narrator that sits in front of the camera.
Absolutely. I'll produce, but I don't think it would ever be a good idea for me to get in front of the camera, though.
Okay. I am a published author, and I'm approaching the historical fiction genre because I write like urban fiction, and then I write my
Okay.
news articles, right?
Absolutely.
So I'm going to get in your inbox and ask you some questions because historical fiction should be reality based, right? You
Absolutely.
just might have a little different of elaboration on some things, but I really want to keep it true to the ancestors' time. So I have I'm pretty good into the story, but now I want to develop the spiritual side of it.
Absolutely.
So I don't want to give too much away on here. I'm getting your inbox when I have more of an idea of how to put it to you so that you understand exactly
Please
what
do.
I'm saying.
Absolutely.
I will. So now this is like the final question before we really, really close out. What book is called Written Resources? What books or resources do you recommend for first generation practitioners trying to learn about Big Mama and the Fingers? But before you answer that question, can you tell me what generation hoodoo you are?
I'm a millennial. So I'm actually my age. I'm actually 42 years old.
No, I mean like people be like, I'm a sixth generation hoodoo. I'm a fourth generation.
Oh man, our family is one of the actual founding families. So we come from the very beginning. I don't like hoodoo. Now hoodoo has been around since 1870, and I know that because I'm one of the families that we're one of the families that helped put it together. And so man, it's a lot of generations. Like it's like it's probably like the only thing is I think there's only maybe 4 generations from actually hoodoo to now. Like 1870 to now is about 5 generations at most. But we're definitely one of the founding families as far as like really where the source of it comes from. Because the truth about hoodoo is that it was Creole people from Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama. And we always like to say it that way. It rhymes, but it's true. These Creole people got together. And Louisiana seemed to play the lead role in wanting to figure out who the root workers were and who do. So that's where the question comes from. Who do root work comes from the Creole women in particular in Louisiana, Mississippi, and Alabama, like, cause there was these minstrel shows that would travel all around at that time, just like Antebellum. So this is a popular thing to have these minstrel shows and these Creole people, and we called them the musicians and mystics. Like they would basically be doing all kinds of juju workings and card readings and things like that. A lot of voodoo on display, and they were looking for the root workers because of the whole Underground Railroad heading south, the success of the wars, the Maroon Wars, Seminole Wars. They were aware of how close to emancipation the last war we had was, so they knew how instrumental it was in that. So they wanted that power because it was directly going against white supremacy, not in it wasn't a passive aggressive approach. We directly went up against them. And when they came looking for us, it was one of our families is one of the families they found, like right here in the Appalachian area. So we've been in the Appalachia for quite some time, especially here in Georgia, and then also in the Alabama area where the Appalachians is at as well. And that's where they ran into the first root workers. They were originally headed to the low country because plenty of people told them where root workers originate out of low country. So Savannah, Georgia, South Carolina, that's where all the low country is, Jacksonville, Florida. They were headed that way, but then ran into us here in Appalachia. And then we joined the minstrel shows. And that's when we talk about the 7 regions. That's how the 7 regions came to be. Like the Geechee and these Creole people not only joined up together and created a system of magic, they was having children to specifically try to have initiates into that system. Like it was specifically now taking root work, which was a really something that really was not exclusive to Boo folk, but you found real root work with the Boo folk because we created the ancestral forest. We went through and we buried those remains. We did all the workings of putting them on the sacred ground. And so we know that Boo folk are the origins of what root work is. They're not African, none of that stuff. It comes from these people who are Negroes, an intermix of, the early Bulum, the rice farmers, and the Gula Ogeechee people is where you get root work from. And then those Creole mixed with them, and they helped us organize it into a system because they had an organized system known as Voodoo already. Voodoo is very organized. They're a very organized religion, but they were having issues with using voodoo spirits in a juju format, because when you use a voodoo spirit to go at someone or to do something maybe in a shallow way, in a sense, like you're not using it under the religious context that it's designed to be used, they're using it, then we call that juju. They were running into problems doing that. Their bloodlines were running into problems doing it. So they wanted something that would allow them to tap in to a magic practice without having an after effect. And they were realizing we were doing that and we're not having an after effect. We're thriving, practicing a form of magic. And there seems, like we're doing this very well, doing this in a successful way. But that's why we joined up. And that's why we say root work is the backbone of hoodoo, because they were the original individuals who were asking the question, hoodoo, were looking for the root workers. And when they found us, then we created the 6 fingers of the Mojo hand. It was already, the Mojo hand already existed in Geechee culture, the concept of the Mojo hand, but it turned into a philosophy, like a philosophy now that has 6 fingers. And that was with the help of the Creole people who already knew how to structure a spiritual system because they had voodoo on them. So that is how you get hoodoo. And that's why when we tell people hoodoo it started in 1870 time period. Somewhere between 1870 and 1875 is when hoodoo started. Because it took a little while for them to not just come together, but to actually develop the practice. And after seeing what each one could do and what everyone's mindset was, what we were trying to accomplish with this. And these were people who came together as families. So my family is a mixture of Geechee and Creole people who helped originally, create this. And I'm not saying it was just our family created hoodoo. It's a lot of families that was a part of those minstrel shows. And then those families taught it to hundreds of other families. So now you have a lot of founding families who are part of the original cosmology of hoodoo. And a lot of the blues singers and stuff were speaking about those people. A lot of people in blues that were talking about hoodoo root work were not talking about themselves. They were talking about kind of like rappers rapping about the gangsters. They not the gangsters, but they rap it about the real gangsters. It was more like that. So it's like we're just one of the first families to be in the midst of all of it. So I can't say how many generations, because I know 1870, it's since then, that's where it starts at. And I'm quite sure that's no more than 5 generations in, if you think about it, because I'm 42. And my grandma,
With generations, like it's supposed to be like every 25 years. But then I wonder if a woman a teen has a child, young age, and then, you know what I'm saying?
Yes.
That shortens the generation, correct?
It makes it weird because our elders, like my elders and my family in particular, they lived a long time. Like, so these guys are all in their 90s and they're in the hundreds. And my grandmother didn't stop having kids until she was 50. So, it's just like, it's, in fact, am I wrong? Yeah, she was 50 years old when she stopped having kids. So, it makes it hard to use that measurement. I just know that with my generation, then my mom's, and then my grandmother, then her grandmother, and then her mother. That's the sort. Her mother is part of one of the original families that was in the root work circle that the Creole people came looking for and that they joined it with. So yeah, Geechee women and Geechee men made with the Creole women and Creole men in the minstrel show, joined the minstrel show, traveled around with them to help, spread it in a proper context. Because one of the things, and this is one of the things about the original families, you see how we're just talking about this and we're discussing the practice. That's not what they did before, because most people were real sanctified, or they were very skeptical. Like, the average black person that was coming out of slavery was scared too. They were scared of juju in particular, because most people had such bad experiences with juju practitioners. And so we're trying to introduce this new ideology to them. We're not giving it's a named system, but we're not walking up to people like, hey, would you like to learn hoodoo? We're introducing certain products to. Like we have like certain oils and salves that we make that, depending on the situation, one of the biggest things back then was anxiety. So if I give you an oil and you take a drop of it and you put it on your skin, or you put it around your nose, you put it on your neck like a cologne or perfume or like a fragrance product, and it destroys your anxiety immediately. And then I tell you, I can teach you how to do that if, because they were selective about the people they were teaching. Certain people they could see they had the energy for to really tap in. And they specifically went after those. And what we would say, we went after the people with the strongest voices. So a lot of these folks literally could sing. They really were talented in many different ways. And they would usually help them with a particular circumstance to show their realness. Like instead of telling them, come join this and learn this, it's like, let me show you what I can do. And if this interests you, then, I can show you what we got going on, in this closed practice. And that's how hoodoo was able to be kept such a secretive thing for so long. So that's how it really was introduced versus this practice that was being done in slavery. Like, that's not how that was happening. That was root work and juju and all kinds of other things, wanga and stuff in slavery. But hoodoo is organized. It came, organized system that came actually after slavery. Slavery was already over.
I want to shout out New Eros, who states his family are Mississippi Creole.
Yeah. I just saw.
And I did. Yeah, huh?
I just looked down at the messages too. My bad. I gotta get better at reading the messages.
You will. And then he mentioned mating rituals. It was based off of something you said.
Yep.
And so I think a lot of people get it confused. Well, not the knowledge that Creoles weren't only in Louisiana, because remember I told you about my fourth great grandmother. I find her on the 1870 census in Alabama.
Yes.
But when they asked what year was she born, around what year, and what state, she was born in North Carolina in 1815. Yeah, so I was asking, did they have Creoles in North Carolina and stuff? So yeah,
I bet they had them. I just spoke to a lady who was like, a lot of people who are considered Melungeon. Of course, you got the Creole. Then you got what's the other one? The one you hear about a lot too. You got Creole, Melungeon, and what's that word? Cajun. Cajuns. I know these are all different things, but really, what is a Creole person? It's just it's white tea, some indigenous, and more than likely something Negro. You can't say African because the Negroes are well established. They've been established for over 400 years, and they're already intermixed with white tea. But a Creole is just someone that's probably been a little more mixed in with white tea and maybe indigenous American too, or one or the other. Like, so a lot of times, what a Creole is just someone who's it's like a double dipped, in a sense. They're still, and so it's a hard concept, and it's not a very Creole people are mixed with French within a French colony. Okay, and that makes a lot of, and that's the thing is that even like even when people hear Geechee people say they speak Creole, they're saying Krio, not Creole. Like not like French Creole, like they're saying Creole, which is just a type of almost a language they made that's a mixture of their tongue, the indigenous stuff they learned, the African stuff they brought over, and the Caribbean stuff that was intermixed with them being brought to those areas. So Creole is something that is unique, and You know, like, and I think that when I see Creole people, majority of the time they tell me that they're a mixture of Native American and French, like you said, like, you know, more like French than anything. And then Mississippi, Alabama, like he's saying, Mississippi, Alabama, Louisiana, absolutely. That's the most popular areas I've heard about with Creole people. And I know that when it comes to the gypsy train, that's just where they were coming from at that time. Like they were collecting them, like whatever that train was. It seemed like it started out in Louisiana with Creole women who were connected to, and they called them gypsy trains, because they were connected to the actual gypsy people that were prevalent in the Romanian gypsies, like mixed in with the Creole population. And that's, you know, so there was a type of gypsy there, you know, a type of Creole there that called themselves a gypsy. You know, so that's where we say the gypsy train is what started hoodoo, because it starts in Louisiana, moves to Mississippi, Alabama, and then ends up in Georgia, where they find the root workers, because that's where the root worker originally comes out of, is this area.
You know, it was one of my favorite Creoles. There's about Creoles on here, like open Creoles, no, you know, tell you they Creole. And she's basically why I reached out to you. She was just very adamant that like you said, it wasn't formed until 1870, like around that time period. But she was saying it didn't start here until the Africans came, so the origins is in West Africa.
Man,
And I'm like, but you forgetting that, let me tell you what I told her. I said, well, you're forgetting the indigenous flora. So even if they came here, the plants, the herbs were indigenous to here. How did they know what plants to use for what ailments or whatever else herbs
absolutely.
would be used for? So
And
it was a
that
tough.
you would think it would destroy the whole argument, but it's not. You know what it is? Most people don't have the context of herbal dominance, and because it's like Geechee Gullah are a great tool for all Black Americans to use as a open, like something that was documented so heavily. Like a lot of slaves and plantations were not documented as heavily as they were, because they were this weird anomaly that was taking place. Like one of the big issues with the Geechee Gullah people of the seacoast, whether you're talking South Carolina or you're talking Savannah, Georgia, is YT couldn't be around them the way they wanted to be. Like they struggled to be on those seacoast islands with them, because they would succumb to malaria, yellow fever, and diseases that they didn't have names for. And that's where the whole ideology of the boohag comes in, and the pink blue bottle trees and stuff. Like they knew that there were sometimes they were succumbing to diseases that absolutely resembled rabies, absolutely resembled it, other than, you know, but it just caused them to have the same effects. And that is something that Hanks are heavily associated with, is the energy of rabidness and rabies itself. And it's more indigenous, native concept, where we get the concept of Hanks from. We get it from the indigenous people who taught us about it. And we were, you know, so when you take all of that, then you got to look at the fact that it's because of the Gully Ogeechee people, or the Gula Ogeechee people, however you want to say it, that taught them about the herbs, mainly because malaria was the most dominant. Yellow fever and malaria were really dominant in the area because of rice farming. And the thing about malaria is that it's a parasitic disease. Like there's a parasite in the mosquito that stings you. And as it's biting you, or, you know, basically stings you and bites you, it gets that parasite into your blood system. That parasite attaches to your liver, starts to thin out your blood, starts to eat at the clotting factor in your red blood cells, and causes your blood to thin out. And what you'll notice with people who succumb to malaria is that they start bleeding out of their eyes, their anus, out of every orifice in their body. They just start bleeding. You know, like they basically have no clotting factor to keep the blood inside of their body, which is why malaria is deadly. And we had the understanding of the particular type of herbs and roots to use to kill that parasite before it could attach to our blood cells in our blood. So that's why we would take certain herbs on a regular, and we didn't succumb to malaria. And we didn't have no problems with it. If that understanding comes from Africa, then why is the main cause of death by way of animal in Africa mosquito? That's the main cause of death in Africa by way of an animal. Not a lion, not a hippo, not any of the animals that we're most afraid of. It's the mosquito over there in West Africa that's taking most of them out from the animal standpoint. They have no understanding of how to deal with malaria. None. So it's like That's something that's very much so connected to the indigenous people here in the Gullah Geechee are, because the fact that that is what even YT associated. They said we had a herd immunity because they associated us with animals. They looked at us as cattle, and they said the reason why they're not succumbing to malaria and yellow fever is because they have herd immunity to it. They do come from Africa, and they've been around this stuff forever, so it's just not hurting them over here. And they just left it at that. Like that was the way that they were able to explain it to the American government and everything, and just kind of write it off because it spooked those who were in the situation out because they saw this stuff is still weird. It's not taking them out, but it's taking us out. And it was causing them to not be able to live on the seacoast with them. Like pretty much 8 to 7 months out of the year for sure, you didn't see YT on the seacoast because that season of harvest at certain times of the year, the mosquitoes would just be too heavy, and you were going to more than likely end up sick, with this disease. So that's the thing, is that we don't got to even talk spiritual. We can just go to actual hardcore physical evidence that shows that if this stuff comes from Africa, then why over there in Africa it's just taking them out? But over here, we literally were considered to have herd immunity because it didn't touch us. Like we just were unfazed by malaria and yellow fevers and Geechee Gullah people. So it's the indigenous people the reason why we had that. And those indigenous people, along with these blacks that were from Africa, creates the Negro. And the Negro is the one that root work and hoodoo comes out of. Technically the root work comes out of these indigenous, Gully Ogeechee people. They're the ones who are really responsible for it, but they're the raw, the full-blooded Ogula Ogeechee is gone. There is no full blood. They all intermixed in with the slaves and became the Negro, in this territory. So there is no full-blooded Gula Ogeechees. So anybody black trying to tell you that they lying. That's not true. So
I called the closeout, right?
yes.
And so, and I want to thank you before we really close out and tell you thank you for coming to my platform twice to make sure that we get down to the root of hoodoo.
Absolutely, no problem at all. No problem.
So the final words question is: what is your one piece of advice for those who know they are of the lineage but have no living elders to guide them in regards to hoodoo?
Honestly, the best thing to do is, don't worry about no spirits. I wouldn't even get lost in the whole ancestral talk as of yet, like in the beginning. The thing to do until you really find someone you can trust, that you really trust listening to, is look to the regions. Like hoodoo has 7 regions for sure that it's connected to. And in all 7 of those regions, you have bodies of water and you have land. So it's just like, if nothing else, if you can just find a way to get your hands on water in those different regions that hoodoo comes out of, and get your hands on the land, the dirt of those regions. We know that there's a spiritual, ancestral relationship that automatically gets developed from respecting just that ritual of nothing else alone. So I advise anyone interested in this practice, go to, there's 7 regions. You got Appalachia hoodoo, you got Low Country hoodoo, you have Tidewater hoodoo, you have Louisiana hoodoo, you have Delta hoodoo, you have Black Belt hoodoo, and then you have Southern Plains hoodoo. So in all those regions, which have a plethora of different states in them, in those different regions, you can go to those areas, collect the water, collect the dirt, and the ancestral force is connected to this will reach out to you because you've tapped into a type of cheat code or a type of working, a type of ritual that's showing that you're coming with a certain level of understanding, like you're interested in understanding. So it's the best way to develop an ancestral relationship with this practice before you allow anyone to guide you or do anything, get into any of that. Just like do those things, because this is something that's connected to the land. It's an ancestral force connected to hoodoo, which is why we say root work is the backbone. So it's like you can connect directly into that. Nobody has to give you that. That's something that you have, access to, regardless if you're a Black American.
So can you please tell everybody how to contact you or how to follow your post so that they could get this good information firsthand.
Absolutely. You can just link jump on my page, add me. My page is open. If you don't feel like, being a friend, you can just watch the post. It's all open. Of course I don't say too much, but there's plenty of good information, just surface level, but still got some meats and potatoes, to spike pure curiosity, to get people to maybe go explore certain other areas. Like, okay, let me look into this based off of what you said. And I'm doing this on purpose because I know as Black Americans, there's a link, an ancestral link to where, because you're getting the certain, it's like, completing a sentence. You'll be able to complete a lot of sentences that people who are listening and ain't got no real ties to this will never be able to do. Like they can listen all day, but the ancestry determines what you'll get and what you won't.
So honoring, is your page ain't private? Because
No.
honoring is saying she's having a hard time following you.
Oh, that's interesting. No, yeah, it's not private. Let me see if I can like I just followed honoring, so it should
Let you determine. Yeah, you should be able to follow. Yeah, because I have a private page. All of a sudden, I went live one day, and they was like, "You can't gift. You can't receive gifts for the simple fact that your page is private." And I like my echo chamber. I deal enough with the other people on the other pages that I'm mod for honoring.
Oh, that's probably why. And it's probably got to do where when anyone, like, it won't let certain ads or anything like that. It might be set up that way. They definitely don't like private pages. That's why they do all that.
No,
And
but I
see,
like my echo chamber. So here's the thing. You can catch me
understand.
on another platform and gift me, or you can send $1 or $2 to my CA because I can't say the word. So when we first started, I'm gonna go back to when we first started this interview, right? I had
Yeah.
mentioned Maria Safax and that she might possibly be the daughter of Robert E. Lee, the Confederate. I don't want to leave the audience at a cliffhanger, so I looked into that because I don't know where I got it from, but I know I got it, right? And it says no, it is not believed that she was his daughter. Historically and genealogically, the connection is that they were half siblings by marriage. But more importantly, they were likely paternal half siblings. And then they give a brief breakdown. Maria Safax is widely believed to be the biological daughter of George Washington Parke Custis, the grandson of Martha Washington. Since Robert E. Lee married Mary Ann Randolph Custis, George's only legal white peer, meaning, his beneficiary for everything, Maria and Robert E. Lee's wives were half sisters. So I didn't want to leave the audience because I know I started off the the interview waiting for you, and I started talking on her, and then I left it at that cliffhanger. But again, I want to say thank you so much, and feel free whenever my panel's up and you hear a topic that you like. But right now, I'm focused on telling the real history of New York, the Black American history, to kind of come back. The whole New York was built by immigrants, right? When it was actually not. For some reason, my sights have been turned towards hoodoo. And I'm going to tell everybody when he says that his page is open, you could view his post. It's good information, but it's surface level. All the questions that I had here, especially, and then a few from the Creole, my favorite Creole, that we were tussling about the origins of hoodoo, actually did come from his page and her. So if you like the questions, follow his post because you're going to get even more in depth because he does have videos and stuff of that nature on his page, correct?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So thank you for joining me, and I'm going to go ahead and shut it down, get a little breather, and then go make my steak, y'all.
Absolutely. Thanks for listening, everybody, and I hope this was helpful.
It was beyond helpful, and I'm definitely going to be in your inbox. Trust me, if not tonight, over the course of the weekend.
Absolutely. Anytime.
Yes. And Ali says thank you. New Arrows has the hands up, like high fives, some power fists, some red and blue hearts in the prayer hands. And Honoring says, hold on. Honoring says, yes, this was amazing and so refreshing. New Arrows is eating catfish and spaghetti, and he's saying that on purpose because I said fish and spaghetti, and he said catfish and spaghetti. I said, I never had catfish. He said, why not, BX? I said, I don't like the name.
That's some southern stuff right there, but it's good. That's some
You gotta
southern
treat me, and I
thing.
might eat it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but okay, thank you again, Kalen, and I appreciate you.
Absolutely. And we'll talk again here in the future.
Yes, we will. Be one family.
Panel. But see, the thing is, people missing that this is social media. And we got a right to agree to disagree. Nobody have to listen to what you say on social media, man, and follow you. I don't join gangs. I don't join cliques. I didn't join my father's fraternity. I don't just follow people because they're supposedly black or what they say out their mouth. That could just be nonsense. You got a right to disagree with somebody. Everybody got to follow you, or people on here doing foolish stuff that they know they're not willing to live, or
For you, BX the storyteller, bringing the spark. No one does it better. BX, you've heard the rest, but she's the best. Yeah, she's the best. Oh, from ancient tales to modern schemes, unraveling truths and chasing dreams.